Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Joining us now is the nuclear veteran Brian Untank and director and cinematographer Daniel Everett-Locke. Daniel, I'm also joined by Alan Owen, who's, of course, the founder of Lab Rats International. Let's just get you to put this in perspective. You've done this film, you've met these men and women, these survivors who've had no compensation from wretched government after government. What are these people like?
I mean, they're incredible. Honestly, I mean, Brian's a fantastic example of the strength and, resilience of these men. One thing that kind of hit me making this documentary was how all of them have said the same thing, which they are the luckiest people alive.
And Brian, you have survived, but not without difficulty. Tell us about some of the health problems that you've had as a result of testing these weapons.
Have we got time?
Well, a brief summary.
I lost all my teeth at the age of 20.
Gosh.
Since then, I've had 98 skin cancers removed. I have bladder cancer. I have a very rare prostate cancer, among other things.
Gosh.
And I'm doing well.
And you've had children and grandchildren?
4 of my children have had medical problems. 2 of my grandchildren have got medical problems. One of my youngest grandchildren at the time had a black melanoma growing on his head. My youngest granddaughter now has got chalk teeth, same as young Sasha from Steve Pearce and other of the descendants.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, it's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Charlie Peters. We're broadcasting live across the United Kingdom with all the very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on the show today. Shabana Mahmood, she's preparing to hand more cash to the French to stop the boats as our eye-watering £500 million deal teeters on collapse. But with new damning figures that show France is actually getting worse at stopping migrants crossing, is it time to stop paying and defund the useless French? An arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that Iranian sleeper cells have already infiltrated Britain. We'll have the latest analysis on that. And the ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Calacane continues to shock and appall. Today, we heard from the inquiry that the partner of Nottingham victim Ian Coates was told by police to buy a dog. That's after we learnt that his body remained at the scene for 15 hours after his killing. So how much more systemic failure can the families endure? We'll also be speaking to disabled man Brian Rowe, who has dreamt of being a bin man since he was just 2 years old. He says he is heartbroken after being rejected twice from the job, despite completing a 9-month internship for free. And heroic Navy gunner and friend of GB News, John Dennett, has sadly passed away at the age of 101. He fought at every historic Allied landing in Europe during the Second World War. I'll be joined by John's friend and chairman of the football club he founded to pay tribute to the hero.
We must never forget what happened years ago through all the wars that enabled us to be where we are.
Good afternoon. Very grateful for your company today and looking forward for your perspectives and your takes on all of the top stories we're covering throughout the show. You know the drill by now, gbnews.com/your say. Particularly interested if you've got anything to say about this ongoing deal with France that's being renegotiated by Shabana Mahmoud. Do you trust Labour to get it right? They say that the French have stopped several deportations and several people trying to get across, but the small boat migrants, of course, they just keep coming. Many say that deal is not worth a quid, let alone 500 million. So please do get in touch. And before we get stuck into that, our top story, let's cross over now to Sam Francis for all of your latest news headlines.
Charlie, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, the top story this hour, Donald Trump has said Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there is now a very good chance of a deal. But Iran is dismissing that outright as fake news and vowing to fight on until what it calls complete victory. Well, missiles have continued to fly on day 25 of the conflict. Iran has launched fresh strikes on central Israel, including Tel Aviv, while Israel says it hit 50 targets in Tehran overnight. Sirens have also sounded across the Gulf, with Bahrain and Kuwait intercepting missiles as the conflict widens beyond the immediate front lines. Despite talks of diplomacy from Washington, both Iran and Israel are doubling down, with Israel continuing strikes not just in Iran, but against Hezbollah in Lebanon on a second front. Here, meanwhile, the government is warning the economic impact of that conflict could be significant, with fresh plans to shield households from rising costs. Rachel Reeves says oil and gas prices remain high and inflation could reach up to 3.5% in the coming months. She's announced stronger powers for regulators to crack down on companies accused of profiteering during the crisis, saying it will be responsive and responsible. Well, the Chancellor also confirmed moves to boost energy security, including investment in renewables, nuclear expansion and backing domestic oil and gas.
And I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
In other news this afternoon, transgender girls have been given until September to leave Girl Guiding. The organisation says membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling defining sex as biological sex in equality law. Affected members will have until the 6th of September to leave or move into alternative roles. Girl Guiding says it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. The King has become patron of a charity protecting British Jews from terrorism and anti-Semitism. That comes in the wake of an arson attack in north-west London. 4 Jewish community ambulances were destroyed in Golders Green in the early hours of Monday. Police say they're investigating whether an Islamist group with possible links to Iran was behind the attack. Kemi Badenoch has said the UK needs to get a lot more serious about tackling anti-Semitism, including potentially banning some protests and taking action against those who incite violence.
Also seeing an increase, and to be honest, it's happening across Western Europe, an increase of people coming from countries where there is a culture of anti-Semitism, hatred against Jews. People with that particular historical culture are of increasing number here. So this is why I said we need to toughen our immigration policy. It's not enough that people come here to work. They need to be able to abide by our norms and our values, and if they can't, they should be sent back. We need to start cracking down on the sources of the anti-Semitism, not just the symptoms. It's not just enough to say let's have more security guards and a bit more money. Let's tackle the root of it.
Sir Ed Davey has launched the Liberal Democrats' local election campaign today, positioning his party as the one to fix community issues. Speaking in West Surrey, he contrasted that with Nigel Farage, accusing the Reform UK leader of wanting to model the UK on Donald Trump's America. He says that approach would bring chaos and division to Britain's streets.
If you look at others, it's a bit different. There's some politicians who just want to divide us, want to divide our communities, who are too busy pointing the finger of blame at others rather than rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. They want to import Trump-style divisive politics into our country. We don't. We don't want that division.
And we've heard news today that the relationship expert from Married at First Sight, Mel Schilling, has sadly died at the age of 54. In a statement shared on her Instagram, it says she passed away peacefully, surrounded by love. Earlier this month, she revealed her cancer had spread to her brain, saying there was nothing further doctors could do. She was, of course, widely known for her role offering relationship advice on the Channel 4 dating show. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in around 22.5 minutes' time.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now, to our top story here. The Home Secretary is preparing to hand more cash to the French to help stop the boats. But in exchange, Sabana Mahmood says she wants more bang for her buck because the existing £500 million agreement is about to expire and has been criticised as more crossing attempts are successful rather than thwarted. Well, 2 weeks ago, the French stopped just 68 migrants from crossing compared to 357 that made the trip. That's just a 19% success rate. So, is it finally time to stop paying and actually defund the French? Well, I'm joined now by our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, and GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. I'll go first to you, Mark, because this is a big situation with these ongoing negotiations. How much confidence can the government have that actually they're going to get a new deal on this?
Well, I think there will be a deal. It depends just what exactly that deal will be and whether, of course, it will be, as we understand Shabana Mahmood wants, at least part of it being linked to the performance of the French police in stopping these boats. But really, I think the issue is still very vague in terms of what they mean by preventions as well, because it's my understanding that actually a prevention isn't just the French police stopping these boats on the beaches, but actually any of the boats that don't make it to UK waters. So if a boat gets into the water and is en route to the UK but suffers an engine failure, or it's too overcrowded, or comes up against sort of heavy waves and wind, the French border patrols will intervene to take these people off into safety. That, I think, is included in the prevention figures as well. So actually the patrolling element of it, the law enforcement element on the beach, is a smaller part of the preventions that we're told about. So I want to show you, Charlie, just some images that we have got. This is just in the last couple of days. Now, that's the French police arresting a migrant on a beach. There are French police patrols. Hey, look at them. They're everywhere. And indeed, the local charities there, the activist groups, are reporting huge numbers of police right along the northern shores of France, from Dunkirk down through Calais and further south. Now, is it any coincidence, do we think, that this is at a time when these talks are underway with the British and French governments to hammer out this new deal? Well, the cynic in me suggests that perhaps it's no coincidence, because I can tell you, covering this almost day in, day out, that you do not see normally that many French police in the areas around the beach at a time. They're there and they can respond to incidents, but they're never normally parked up in significant numbers like
Mark,
that.
just staying with you for this moment, just for a bit more, the Prime Minister's spokesperson is saying that they want to introduce flexibility and innovation to this deal they have with the French. It seems to me, based on the reporting you're doing, those images you've obtained, that actually what they need in this deal is just back to basics, good, honest, proper, rigid policing and proper surveillance and application of the law on the coastline.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the whole deal, you've got to ask, what does the UK really gain from this deal at the end of the day? If the police, and that's the bulk of the money that is being spent is on the onshore police patrols, if they are only stopping a fraction of the numbers who are being prevented and returned, is it worth over £500 million in a renewed deal? The other issue is as well that we don't much talk about, but it is absolutely the reality of what's going on there, is that anybody the French either scare away from the beach to stop them launching in the first place, or indeed return back to French shores, are not locked up in detention camps. They are, if they're lucky, processed and fingerprints taken and alike, but in many circumstances they're not even processed. They just scatter, return to the camps, meet up with the people smugglers again, and then in a day or two or three they go back onto the boats and they try again, and in most of the cases the boats that get through in most cases. So there are maybe not going through on that particular day that they are unsuccessful, but a few days later, in all likelihood, they are getting through to the UK as well. So, you know, you're paying more than £500 million in this deal for what? To effectively prevent someone from coming for a few days.
Chris Hope, you've heard Mark White's analysis there. One of the aims, we're told, that Shabana Mahmood is seeking to achieve in these negotiations is perhaps only to release that money when the French earn it. They only get paid if they actually manage to stop those boats launching.
Yeah, that's right, Charlie. That was a report in today's Times newspaper. Now, in the lobby briefing I was at earlier, the government wouldn't confirm that was the deal, but they did say this. They want flexibility and innovation in this policy, but crucially, it must prioritise long-term value for money. It does seem crazy, frankly, that a deal signed by the Tories when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, they didn't have any kind of results-based side to the money being given to them. We gave them £478 million over 3 years. This deal runs out on Tuesday next week. The government is now in talks about extending it. It doesn't mean on Wednesday, by the way, that the French will wash their hands and stop trying to do that limited enforcement they're doing, as Mark White says there. But they will look to roll it over on a week-by-week or month-by-month basis. Number 10 says this: we are united in wanting to stop small boats crossings and building flexibility and innovations into this deal. And that's where we are. It does seem odd, I think, as the government says it, and we haven't seen the actual small print of this deal agreed with the French, even though it's so much money, even though it's 3 years ago, that results were not built into that. But that's where Shabana Mahmood is going. It sounds right to me. The question is, what deal will France do? Because so far, so low numbers. Now, we're told by the government that 40,000 crossings have been stopped by the French. Mark White may wonder what stopping means. Does that mean actually being in the water or not? And who's actually counting that for the French? But just 400 have been stopped on the one in, one out idea. So, of the 400 who came here illegally, we sent 400 back to France. That doesn't sound to me like a deal that's going well. It's being tried and tested, but will it be expanded? We'll wait and see when this deal eventually is agreed.
Chris, can I just ask, in terms of your dealings with Downing Street, do they ever suggests that actually the onus is on the French anyway, as it is on our nation, to guard their own shores, to ensure that people are not embarking on very dangerous journeys and are not breaking the law in doing that. It should never have to be down to this country to pay the French to do what is their responsibility.
Well, of course, that's right. And Mark White, you remember when, of course, Emmanuel Macron came and gave his speech in the Parliament last July. He said then, didn't he, that this is putting a lot of pressure on mayors in northern France. The pull factor of coming to the UK is creating its own issues with people waiting to board those vessels in northern France. So, yes, I mean, it really should be down to the French, frankly, to deal with it. And, of course, these migrants have come through France from somewhere else. Why aren't the French trying to return them to where they've come from? Why is this our problem? And why does it seem the French are washing their hands of it? There have been some leaked accounts of communications between Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron when it seems the UK is quite frustrated with the French inability to stop the flow north. Of course, this government is trying to end the pull factor. Most of that is that's putting them in hotels. In the future, we're told by the next election, all hotels will have closed and migrants will be in camps. And I've been, of course, in Denmark seeing those with the Home Secretary in recent weeks.
Mark White, when you look at the pull factors that remain, though, in the United Kingdom, do you think that enough has been done to sufficiently quieten the demand that the people smugglers are seeing throughout Europe, but obviously ending on the north coast of France?
Not nearly enough, no, because I really don't think that, you know, the choice of a hotel or a house in a terrorist street or indeed maybe a former army camp for a few months is the issue that pulls or prevents people from coming to the UK in the first place. The biggest pull factor of all is that if you arrive on these shores by small boat, in all likelihood, you will get to remain. Now, you'll either get to remain because you'll be granted asylum, but if you're not granted asylum, the chances are you're from a myriad of countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, and so many others, where lawyers, activist groups will absolutely be able to argue in the courts that it's not safe to return you to those countries. So you will get indefinite or interim leave to remain and then potentially indefinite leave to remain after that. And that's the biggest pull factor of all. The fact that when they cross the English Channel, they know the chances of them ever being returned back across the Channel are minute.
OK, Home and Security Editor Mark White and our political editor Christopher Hope, thank you both. And because I am covering for Martin Daubney, I should say it almost looks as though the lunatics could be taking over the asylum system. Right, well, let's bring in now the former Independent Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine. John, thank you very much for joining us in the studio this afternoon. When you look at these developments with the French, what's your main reaction to what appear to be the proposals coming out of the Labour camp at the moment?
Well, my reaction is that if there's going to be a renewal of this arrangement with the French, there needs to be absolute clarity about what its purpose should be. And a meeting of minds between the British and the French about the purpose of it and the money that has to be spent on it, in achieving it. Now, at the moment, I think the French are only intercepting about 30-odd% of people trying to cross the Channel illegally. And those were the figures I think I saw the other day. And that's not acceptable. If we're going to pay this sort of money, we need the French to help us prevent far more people crossing the Channel illegally.
So do you think these plans...
And I would have thought that should be a priority for the British government.
No, absolutely. And these ideas that are being mooted in the papers, that perhaps one of the ways that they could incentivise the French to do a better job is that they don't get the cash until they do actually intervene to stop the boats. Do you like the idea of that proposal?
Well, yes, I do, actually, because I always think that performance indicators are important in driving actual performance. And that was the case when I was a chief constable, and that's what I used to look for when I was inspecting borders and immigration. And so, you know, there's no point just having the French police wandering up and down the coast of France. Or as Mark said in his analysis, you know, there are a lot of police vans there, lots of police officers there physically, but what are they actually doing? What they need to be doing is wading into the water and preventing the taxi boats. There was supposed to be an agreement with the French police about that. It would seem that the French police think there's insurmountable health and safety issues. Well, if there is, then please don't weave that into the latest agreement because it's not working. There needs to be an analysis of what's working and focusing on the things that, the tactics, that the police themselves at the sharp end think will actually work. And the French police at the sharp end and border officers at the British end will know what they need to do the job effectively. The use of technology is fine, in intelligence gathering. I mean, why, for example, is organised crime able to organise themselves and launch basically multiple attempts to cross the Channel in March? They've been planning, obviously, for a number of months now. So where has our effort been in actually preventing that planning coming to fruition beginning in this month and then throughout the rest of the year? So getting an insight into what's happening by informants, intelligence, is really important. So that should be at the heart of the agreement with the French as well. So we need to focus ruthlessly on what will work in reducing the numbers.
There have been so many times when we've heard, Mark White doing reports where he's been able to show us that there are thousands of people waiting, a mile or so just off the coast, further down the streams, the tributaries that go towards the coastline. So they'll be aware that that's going on. If Mark's seeing it, I'm sure the French authorities are seeing it as well. So there's a lot of intelligence gathering. There's a good reconnaissance picture already. The frustration seems to be more from the British side, and I'm sure this is shared also by British Border Force officers as well, watching their border, being completely ignored by people who could be being stopped in France. There must be that sense of frustration that they know that can be done.
I'm sure there's a lot of frustration amongst frontline officers on both sides. You see, I would in years gone by, the French used to dismantle the camps. They used to dismantle the camps and disperse the people. And whenever you've got camps in northern France, they're going to be a rendezvous point and an organisation point for organised crime in bringing people together and bringing them together to cross on boats. So I think one of the things that should be done is that we should revisit the dismantling of those camps. And I'm sure there'd be a lot of support from people who live in northern France who would like their own police force to do just that.
Can I just say, John, I think you're absolutely right there. And the French, I think, wanted to continue that disrupting process of going in regularly and turning these camps over and just keeping people on the move. But they lost a legal battle in the French courts, which means they now have to give them facilities to shower and toilet facilities, food facilities in there as well. So, it's just making it even more difficult for them to try to get a grip of the problem, even, Well,
I think that's a real problem as well, because, there's a safety issue in relation to the migrants in the camps. And if those people are being put at risk by organised crime, there's a perfectly good reason why the police should be there. If the police don't go into areas like that, then criminal gangs will actually go there with impunity. So I think it's an important thing to have as part of this new agreement.
John Vine, just very quickly, we're talking about the failure to intervene on the French coast, the legal troubles that they're facing, and indeed when they're trying to disrupt those camps. Do you think that the Labour government will come to regret that decision they made on their first day back in power to scrap the Rwanda scheme?
Well, the Rwanda scheme, of course, we talked about for 2.5 years, and it never really got off the ground.
Due to legal dramas
to be
there
fair,
as well,
to whatever reason, but it didn't. The problem is that there needs to be a credible deterrent. If there's no credible deterrent, which I have said before on this programme, then people will increasingly chance their arm, give their money to organised crime and try and get across the Channel. So whatever that credible deterrent is, it does need to be of scale, and it needs to threaten the business model properly. If it doesn't do that, then it won't work.
OK. The former Independent Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine, and Mark White, thank you very much. Of course, that main deterrent at the moment, as we often say, what is it, Mark?
It's the weather.
It's the weather.
It's just got windy again, so no more small boats until at least the weekend.
That's our major deterrent, up and in action as we speak. Right, still to come here on the Martin Daubney Show. Rachel Reeves, she's implied that she will exclude the middle classes from future supports on energy bills. But why doesn't she just drill the North Sea instead? This is GB News, Britain's news channel. See you after the break.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
We'll be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. It's 29 minutes past 3 and I'm Charlie Peters covering for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, Rachel Reeves has suggested that she will exclude the middle classes from any future support on energy bills as the economy reels from the Iran war.
And I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives are urging the government to drill the North Sea, calling the current ban sheer lunacy. Well, we can speak now with journalist and author of Not Zero, How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You. That's Mr. Ross Clark. Ross, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Obviously, the Conservatives pushing for this North Sea oil drilling plan. Do you think there's a chance that the government might budge on that, considering the energy crisis that we're now in?
Well, it's getting so ridiculous the way the government is holding out against this. It's now got green entrepreneurs, even renewables industry, telling it that it needs to reopen drilling in the North Sea. And the government just keeps on plugging this same old fib that saying that, oh, if we drill more oil and gas in the North Sea, it will make no difference to UK prices because it'll just be sold on international markets at the global price. Now, you can talk about a global price for oil, but not for gas. Gas being very much more difficult to store and transport. Wholesale prices vary enormously around the world. In Europe, they are 3 times as much as they are in the US at the moment. In 2022, during that energy crisis, wholesale gas prices in Europe were 15 times what they were in the Middle East. Now, why that discrepancy? Because the US and the Middle East are producing large quantities of locally produced gas. And what we're doing in Britain, increasingly and across Europe, is we are importing liquefied natural gas, which is a very expensive way to import it because the gas has to be compressed, cooled, refrigerated during transit, and then regasified when it gets to the shores of Europe. And that's why our wholesale prices are so high. Another factor is we have very, very little gas storage, particularly in Britain. Gas is a difficult fuel to store compared with coal, and of course we've eliminated coal from our electricity mix, so that's another upwards pressure on energy prices that's an own goal by our own government.
Ross, now the Labour government say that they are pressing ahead with their plan on renewables. This is the best way to deal with our energy issues, and also, of course, they regularly refer, and we hear the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband talking about how this will reduce emissions. But an argument we're hearing more and more about is what you've just touched on, which is that actually importing gas, LNG, that way actually may increase emissions because it involves the use of heavy tankers, those refrigeration processes that you were talking about, so much processing involved. Actually, it might be a more lower emission move to deal with gas that's available within the UK.
Well, it absolutely would be, because the process of refrigerating, liquefying and then regasifying gas, that consumes about 10% of the fuel. So, right there, you've increased emissions by 10% by using LNG compared with locally produced gas, which hasn't been liquefied. The other thing in the LNG process is more potential for emissions, process emissions in the form of methane. Methane is the main constituent of natural gas. If that escapes, that is a very potent greenhouse gas. It doesn't last as long in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, but very potent greenhouse gas. So you've got more methane emissions as well. So yes, not only are we paying through the nose by refusing to exploit our own gas reserves, we are also increasing carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And so what is the sense in this? And but Ed Miliband keeps sticking to this one line. Now,
sorry, Ross, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Ross Clark, I'm very grateful for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme. There's still lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock, because an arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that more Iranian sleeper cells have infiltrated Britain. We'll get all the latest on that very shortly, but first let's cross over now to Sam Francis for all the latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. At 3:30, the headlines. Donald Trump says Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there's a very good chance of a deal, but Iran is pushing back hard. Tehran calls the claims fake news, vowing to fight until complete victory as missile strikes continue on both sides.
But we'll see what happens. I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
Well, there have been explosions overnight in Tel Aviv and Tehran as the conflict enters its 25th day. Iran launched fresh missile attacks, while Israel says it hit 50 targets in Tehran and will continue strikes in Iran and Lebanon. Here, the Chancellor has warned the economic fallout of the war could be significant. Rachel Reeves says contingency plans are underway to support households, with new powers to crack down on companies exploiting rising energy prices. Transgender girls have been given until September to leave girl guiding. The organisation says it's aligning with the last year's Supreme Court ruling, but campaigners say the move is heartbreaking. The King has become patron of a charity protecting British Jews from extremism. It comes after 4 Jewish ambulances were set on fire in London. Police are now probing possible Iran-linked involvement. Those are the latest headlines. I'll have more for you in an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have a band of heavy rain moving southeast, accompanied by strong winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but showers follow along with bright spells, albeit with a cold wind coming from the north-northwest. That's because we've got one area of low pressure clearing, sending its weather front south, with this cold air tucking in behind. Now, over the next few hours, the heavy rain will affect western and then southern parts of the UK, clearing late evening and followed swiftly by frequent showers or even longer spells of rain in places. But with the cold air arriving at the same time, it's going to be a chilly start to Wednesday, with these showers falling as sleet and snow, especially over higher parts of Scotland. Sleet and hail mixed in with the rain showers elsewhere across the United Kingdom. And there will be frequent showers from the word go, as you can see, especially for central and southern parts of England into East Wales. Some brighter spells in between the showers, but we'll all notice the cold wind during the morning, a stark contrast compared with recent days. Now, across Scotland, some of the snow will be building up over higher parts, especially above 200 or 300 metres. At lower levels, it's a right mixture of rain, sleet, hail and snow. And by the afternoon, things warm up a little, so any snow confined to the hills and mountains of Scotland, as well as the Pennines, Peak District, Welsh Mountains. At lower levels, we'll continue to see rain and hail showers, but interspersed by sunny spells. However, despite the blue skies in places, we'll continue to feel the cold wind, and feels like temperatures will be 1 to 4 Celsius widely. Now, into the evening, showers become fewer and clear spells become more widespread. As a result, it's a frosty start to Thursday before it turns cloudier later on, with another spell of rain arriving from the west.
Thank you to our global community for watching and listening to GB News. We're not only the #1 news channel in Britain, we're chosen by you around the world.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M9, traffic is restricted eastbound between Junction 1A and Junction 1 after a road traffic collision. On the A55 at Britannia Bridge, there's a 30 miles per hour limit in both directions until further notice. On Northamptonshire's M1 northbound, the exit slip at Junction 25 has lane closures following a crash, expected to ease after 4 this afternoon. Also on the M1 northbound near Milton Keynes, a broken down vehicle between Junction 14 and Junction 15 is closing one lane. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and ScotRail report major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, sitting in for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, an arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that Iranian sleeper cells have infiltrated Britain. MI5 are probing links to an Iranian group after 4 vehicles were torched in Golders Green. Now, this follows suspected attacks on synagogues and Jewish schools in Belgium, the Netherlands, and also in Greece this month. We're joined now by Lord Walney, the former independent advisor to the government on extremism. Lord Walney, thanks very much for your company this afternoon. What do you make then of this rising threat? And do you think there have already been sufficient warnings on this issue?
I think it is absolutely right to step up the surveillance of the potential for Iranian operations on these shores. This has been a threat for some time, and there's been a level of response to it, but I don't think there is sufficient appreciation for just how deeply embedded the forces that are either directly controlled by or are sympathetic to the vile Iranian regime are embedded within parts of our public life. So yes, there needs to be the stepping up protection against the direct threat of violence, but of course we have also got to deal with the overwhelming sense felt by many Jewish people that they are being targeted and intimidated in this country in a way that they have never experienced before, and that it is genuinely causing many British Jews to consider whether actually whether they are safe here in this country or they should be considering making aliyah to Israel, which is a terrible indictment of where we are as a country.
That's claiming responsibility for many of those attacks. The map we just showed you on the screen before, it's calling itself the Islamic movement of the Companions of the Right. They've circulated footage of several of these attacks, particularly in the Netherlands. They shared extensive footage of recent arson attacks on a synagogue. But do you think these are sleeper cells being activated in order to pressure European countries, and Britain of course, against supporting in some way the American and Israeli war on Iran? Or do you think this is part of a wider anti-Semitic plot in general?
Well, look, we have to vigorously investigate the claims. No one should take at their word a new organisation which is claiming responsibility like this. But yes, absolutely, it would fit the model of certainly of being a possibility that Iranian cells are being activated at this moment, because we know, and our intelligence services have repeatedly warned about the scale of Iranian activity that has been occurring in the UK for a number of years now. They have thankfully foiled many plots to life where the Iranian regime has thus far largely tried to either target its own Iranian dissidents, people who fled this horrendous regime, or Israelis or Jewish people living here in Britain. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to understand our political leaders and right across the country need to understand that this is an evil regime that is implacably opposed to our country. And although we have given the sense in recent days and weeks and before that of thinking that we don't want to go all in opposing the Iranian regime, actually they see things much more simply than we seem to do. They are clear that the United Kingdom is their sworn enemy, and they will do everything that they can to undermine us. And I think we need a bit of moral clarity in viewing them as the clear threat that they are.
Lord Warner, I just want to take you back to a point you made earlier about Jewish people and also Israelis feeling as though they may have to leave Britain. This morning I read a post on LinkedIn, of all places, a moving post on precisely that issue by a man called Ashley Hurst, titled "A Letter to My British and Jewish Children," and talking about some of what you're touching on here, this increasing feeling that many British Jews are feeling that the country is not for them. What do you think can be done to reassure people like Ashley posting online, sharing these concerns, that actually Jews, of course, do have a place in Britain, that the government backs them and will do everything it can to clamp down on these terrorist or extremist threats?
Yeah, well, what I think many British Jews are feeling really strongly, many that I speak to, and I share this view, is that they have reached the end of their tolerance for political leaders responding to acts like this by saying that they will do whatever it takes to protect British Jews, which is heartfelt and it's right that they say it, but then not following up with the action that is needed. And there is a debate that is going on across the country now, and certainly is being pushed by leaders of Jewish community organizations in discussion with the government about taking the threat of Islamist extremism much more seriously and being much more public about the way that that can pose a threat to our communities on a whole range of levels. And thus far, the government will say the right thing at times of atrocities, but will not follow through on that action which they are being called to do very urgently. And there needs to be a change of heart on that.
OK, Lord Walney, thank you very much for your time and your perspective this afternoon. Right, it's 46 minutes past 3 coming up here on the Martin Daubney Show. A best-selling novelist has blasted a women's health charity as absolutely ridiculous after they hired a trans woman to be a representative for them. We'll get the very latest on that story very shortly, but first, let's get a look at your latest European weather forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A mixed picture weather-wise across southern Europe through tomorrow. We do have some showery rain affecting Greece. None of that looks especially heavy, and it is clearing away. Meanwhile, towards Italy, whilst tomorrow's looking largely dry, Storm Deborah is going to arrive overnight and into Thursday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, even some significant mountain snow. Meanwhile, towards the Canaries and Madeira, well, it's been very unsettled recently. A shift in the wind direction does mean parts towards the southwest will be a bit more sheltered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Goodwood Castle in North Wales was once envisaged as a royal palace for Wales, but after years of neglect became a ruin. A fresh programme of conservation work, supported by the National Lottery, aims to restore it. Lady Marina Cochrane, whose family last lived in the castle in 1924, joins me now. It's so lovely to see you. Tell me about your family's connection to the castle.
Of course, thanks for having me, Michael. So my great-great-grandmother, Winifred Cochrane, used to live in the house up until 1924, and she didn't pass it on to my family, actually. She passed it on to the royal family and, alternatively, the Church of Wales. So as a family now, it's been quite interesting coming onto the project. So I'm helping Mark Baker, the historian and custodian of Greek Castle, who I believe you've met, restore it now into sort of its rightful space and hopefully into a museum. So we're going to relocate some of the art collection that was once there.
You talked about the staircase, for example.
Yes.
Can that, I mean, that must have been a glorious piece, must be hideously expensive.
Yeah.
Can we expect that to be restored in due course?
I hope so, to some extent. Right now, if we can't find stuff at auction, we'll be able to replicate it somehow with copies and other materials. That will be hopefully part of my job as well, to sort of really find other ways that we can replicate what the house really was before.
You talked about a collection in the context of Mark Baker. What is the collection and where is the collection?
So, my great-great-grandmother was an amazing Victorian lady for her era. She collected a lot of female artists.
GB News, the People's Channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, covering for Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, breaking news from earlier this afternoon. Trans girls have been given until September to leave girl guiding. That's as the organisation says it's aligning with the latest Supreme Court ruling. Meanwhile, a best-selling novelist has blasted a women's intimate health charity, that's Endometriosis South, as absolutely ridiculous after they hired a trans woman. Well, joining me now is the Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters, Fiona McAnena. Fiona, it's great to have you on the programme this afternoon. I'd just like to get your reaction first and foremost to that girl guiding development we've heard today, because I know Sex Matters has been engaging with that very closely.
Yes, this row at girl guiding has been going on for 8 or 9 years now, from when guide leaders first said, you know, this is meant to be a girls' organisation, there shouldn't be any boys here. And of course, girl guiding as a charity is dedicated to providing activities for girls, but they decided that some boys could be girls. So what this is now going to settle once and for all is that girl guiding is indeed an organisation for girls. If you want to be in mixed company, go and join the Scouts or do something else. So when you say transgender girls, it's important for people to understand that's boys who say they're girls. And, you know, if girls want to be in female-only company, then girl guiding is now the place. It's pretty shocking that it's taken 18 months from when the Supreme Court ruled on this for girl guiding to deliver to girls that female-only space. But I think it's right for the boys too, because, you know, they've been misled. They've been sold a promise that they can join in with the girls and pretend to be girls. And whatever it is those boys are feeling, they cannot become girls. So it's hard on them too, but it's right for everyone that we reset, you know, and engage in the truth with these children.
And Fiona, let's moving on to this endometriosis story, because the charity involved, Endometriosis South Coast, they said it was scientifically inaccurate to claim that only women experienced endometriosis and that it also affected trans, non-binary and intersex people. Your reaction to that statement, please?
Well, endometriosis is when cells from the uterus escape into and reproduce in other parts of the body. It's very painful. It takes years often for women to get a diagnosis, and it can only happen to women. And whatever they call themselves, they can call themselves non-binary or whatever they like, but they are female, they're women. That's why it happens to them. And it's pretty insulting to try and deny that. You know, female healthcare, particularly reproductive healthcare, is always chronically underfunded. It's an issue. That's why endometriosis is in the news now, because people are talking about how long it takes and how many years women live in pain. So I'm sorry, but this is just nonsense. I don't know what non-binary people are meant to be. Everyone's male or female. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. Fiona McAnena from Sex Matters. Thank you very much. Stay with us for the next couple of hours. More from the French coast and the Channel crossings. But first, let's get a look at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have a band of heavy rain moving southeast, accompanied by strong winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but showers follow along with bright spells, albeit with a cold wind coming from the north-northwest. That's because we've got one area of low pressure clearing, sending its weather front south with this cold air tucking in behind. Now, over the next few hours, the heavy rain will affect western and then southern parts of the UK, clearing late evening and followed swiftly by frequent showers or even longer spells of rain in places. But with the cold air arriving at the same time, it's going to be a chilly start to Wednesday, with these showers falling as sleet and snow, especially over higher parts of Scotland. Sleet and hail mixed in with the rain showers elsewhere across the United Kingdom. And there will be frequent showers from the word go, as you can see, especially for central and southern parts of England into East Wales. Some brighter spells in between the showers, but we'll all notice the cold wind during the morning, a stark contrast compared with recent days. Now, across Scotland, some of the snow will be building up over higher parts, especially above 200 or 300 metres. At lower levels, it's a right mixture of rain, sleet, hail and snow. And by the afternoon, things warm up a little, so any snow confined to the hills and mountains of Scotland, as well as the Pennines, Peak District, Welsh Mountains. At lower levels, we'll continue to see rain and hail showers, but interspersed by sunny spells. However, despite the blue skies in places, we'll continue to feel the cold wind, and feels like temperatures will be 1 to 4 Celsius widely. Now, into the evening, showers become fewer and clear spells become more widespread. As a result, it's a frosty start to Thursday before it turns cloudier later on, with another spell of rain arriving from the west.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M74 northbound, junction 6 on slip from Motherwell remains closed for overnight roadworks. In Tameside, congestion is slowing the A57 westbound between the A628 and the M67, causing 10-minute delays. In Berkshire, a broken-down vehicle is blocking one lane on the M4 eastbound at junction 8 near Windsor and Maidenhead. In West Sussex, another breakdown has closed one lane on the A23 northbound between the A272 and the M23. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and ScotRail report major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away with this very latest Benivan 4-berth campervan. This campervan is fully equipped with its own kitchen, bathroom, dinette and plenty of storage. We'll also get your summer sorted with a further £25,000 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. For another chance to win a campervan and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, it's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Charlie Peters. We are broadcasting live across the United Kingdom with all the very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. And here is what is coming up on the show today. Shabana Mahmood, she's preparing to hand more cash to the French to stop the boats as our eye-watering £500 million deal teeters on collapse. But with new damning figures that show France is actually getting worse at stopping migrants crossing, is it time to stop paying and defund the useless French? Now back home, an arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that Iranian sleeper cells have infiltrated Britain. We'll have all the very latest on that. And the ongoing inquiry into the triple Nottingham killings by psychopath Valdo Callicane continues to shock and appall. Well, today we heard that the partner of victim Ian Coates was told by the police to buy a dog. That's after we learnt that his body remained at the scene for 15 hours. So we're asking, how much more systemic failure can the families endure? We'll also be speaking to Brian Rowe, who has dreamt of being a bin man since he was just 2 years old. But he's now saying that he's heartbroken after being rejected twice from the job, despite completing a 9-month internship for free. And heroic Navy gunner and friend of GB News, John Dennett. He's died at the age of 101. He fought at every historic Allied landing in Europe during the Second World War. And I'll be joined by John's friend and chairman of the football club he founded to pay tribute to the hero.
We must never forget what happened years ago through all the wars that enabled us to be where we are.
Great to have your company here on the Martin Daubney Show this afternoon. Do share your views, post your comments. You know the drill by now. It's gbnews.com/your say. Particularly keen to get your take on these ongoing negotiations between Shabana Mahmood and the French government on our deal on how they're going to stop the boats, as they claim. Do you think that the Conservatives made a big mistake by not applying any performance indicators to that deal? The French are taking the money, but clearly they're not doing enough to stop the crossing. So do you think that Shabana Mahmood's plan could come off, or do you think, as it stands, with no big deterrent, this is just doomed to fail? Let us know. We've got Mark White in the studio. He'll be joining us very shortly to go through all the latest proposals. But before we tuck into that, let's cross over now to Sam Francis for all your latest news headlines.
Charlie, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 4 minutes past 4. Well, Donald Trump has said Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there is now a very good chance of a deal. But Iran is dismissing that outright as fake news and vowing to fight on until what it calls complete victory. Well, missiles continue to fly on now day 25 of the conflict. Iran has launched fresh strikes on central Israel, including Tel Aviv, while Israel says it hit 50 targets in Tehran overnight. Sirens have also sounded across the Gulf, with Bahrain and Kuwait intercepting missiles as the conflict widens beyond the immediate front lines. Despite talk of diplomacy from Washington, both Iran and Israel are doubling down, with Israel continuing strikes not just in Iran, but against Hezbollah in Lebanon on a second front. That comes as the government here is warning the economic impact of that conflict in the Middle East could be significant for the UK, with fresh plans to shield households from rising costs. Rachel Reeves says oil and gas prices remain high and inflation could reach up to 3.5% in the coming months. She's announced stronger powers for regulators to crack down on companies accused of profiteering during the crisis, saying it will be responsive and responsible. The Chancellor also confirmed moves to boost energy security, including investment in renewables, nuclear expansion and backing domestic oil and gas.
I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
Transgender girls have been given until September to leave girl guiding. The organisation says membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling defining sex as biological sex. Affected members will have until the 6th of September to leave or move into alternative roles. Girl Guiding says it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. 4 replacement ambulances have been deployed in Golders Green after Jewish community vehicles were destroyed in a suspected anti-Semitic arson attack. The London Ambulance Service was delivering those units today, with the government stepping in to loan vehicles and cover the cost of those lost. The attack has intensified concern over rising anti-Semitism, with the King today becoming patron of a charity protecting British Jews from terrorism. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says the UK must get a lot more serious, calling for tougher action, including banning some protests and targeting those who incite violence.
We are also seeing an increase, to be honest, it's happening across Western Europe, an increase of people coming from countries where there is a culture of anti-Semitism, hatred against Jews. People with that particular historical culture are of increasing number here. So this is why I said we need to toughen our immigration policy. It's not enough that people come here to work. They need to be able to abide by our norms and our values. And if they can't, they should be sent back. We need to start cracking down on the sources of the anti-Semitism, not just the symptoms. It's not just enough to say, let's have more security guards and a bit more money. Let's tackle the root of it.
Sir Ed Davey has launched the Liberal Democrats' local election campaign today, positioning his party as the one to fix community issues. Speaking in West Surrey, he contrasted that with Nigel Farage, accusing the Reform UK leader of wanting to model the UK on Donald Trump's America. He says that approach would bring chaos and division to Britain's streets.
And if you look at others, it's a bit different. There are some politicians who just want to divide us, want to divide our communities, who are too busy pointing the finger at blame at others rather than rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. They want to import Trump-style divisive politics into our country. We don't. We don't want that division.
And just before I hand you back to Charlie, let's bring you an update, breaking developments in Ukraine, with Russia launching a rare daytime attack on Ukraine, firing reportedly more than 400 drones across the country. Hopefully we can show you some of the latest images just emerging from social media. Dramatic pictures in Lviv on the far east of the country, where you can see here a drone, broad daylight, landing into a building. At least 13 people injured after strikes have hit the city, with residents forced to take shelter in Lviv. Kyiv has condemned the attack as a strike on a crowded city centre in broad daylight, calling for tougher sanctions and decisive action against Moscow. So we'll keep across developments as it appears a dramatic and rare daylight attack being launched on Ukraine as we speak. Those are the latest headlines. I'll hand you straight back now to Charlie.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you, Sam Francis. Now, the Home Secretary is preparing to hand more cash to the French to help stop the boats. But in exchange, Shabana Mahmood says that she wants more bang for her buck. The existing £500 million agreement is about to expire, and it's also been criticised as more crossing attempts are successful rather than thwarted. Well, 2 weeks ago, the French stopped just 68 migrants from crossing compared to 357 that made the trip. That's just a 19% success rate. So is it finally time to stop paying and defund the French? Well, I'm joined now by our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, and our Political Editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, I'll start with you. What is Shabana Mahmood seeking to achieve in these renegotiations?
Well, Charlie, simply value for money. We paid £478 million to France 3 years ago. The last Tory government did try and get them to help secure our southern border and stop people leaving the north of France and coming to our country illegally on small boats for very, very little return. And that's what Shabana Mahmood is so concerned about. We know that privately, reportedly, Sir Keir Starmer was also concerned. The government today, the number 10 spokesman told us, well, the 40,000 people have been stopped coming here from northern France, and they also told us they're looking at getting better value for money longer term. They're looking at an innovative new deal. It runs out on Tuesday. That won't mean that France stops cooperating with UK border enforcement. They will keep still trying to stop people coming across from that border from France into the UK, but we want a better deal. The Home Office hasn't commented on what Shabana Mahmood is looking for, but this idea of payment by results is far more in keeping with today's cash-strapped times, far more in keeping with getting France, frankly, to pony up and do their bit to stop these boats leaving northern France. It hasn't happened so far. Part of the problem, of course, is the pull factors. We've been putting migrants arriving here legally into hotels that many of us couldn't afford from our own private income. Why is that happening? Well, because the government has fought shy of putting them into camps. That's changing. I was with Shabana Mahmood in Denmark recently, showing us what she wants to do. Put people arriving here into camps. If they can't stay here, aren't allowed to stay here, they're then sent back to France or beyond. That's what they want to happen, of course, but so far this government's failed to do it. They're pulling levers like dealing with engine supplies from China, small boat supplies from Germany, but none of this really has worked, and that's maybe why the border chief quit last Friday.
And Mark White's hearing about these potential proposals for a performance-related payment towards the French. If that was currently in play, they certainly wouldn't be getting as much as £500 million.
Well, no, because this 40,000 figure that the government uses as stopped in terms of the number of migrants making it to the UK, every bit of me, with my experience in having covered this story for too many years that I care to remember, tells me that the majority of that 40,000 are not people that were stopped on the beaches by French police, but are people that actually made it into the water and their boats did not make it to the UK for whatever reason. There are multiple reasons. Sometimes the boats are just too full of migrants to make any headway. Sometimes the waves and the wind are just too strong to make any headway. And sometimes, and quite often actually, those dodgy engines from China break down and they're unable to make any headway. Then they get picked up by the French Border Patrol and returned to France. That, I think, is the majority of those that are stopped. Yet we are giving £500 million over 3 years to the French to bolster the policing presence on the beaches, which, yes, there are some interventions on the beaches. Absolutely they are. But they are not at the rate of 40,000 since Labour came to power, in my experience anyway.
Mark, I just want to go back to Chris Hope now for a bit of breaking news that's coming into us here at the GB newsroom, which is regarding Morgan McSweeney, the government's former chief advisor to Sir Keir Starmer. Chris, obviously his phone was stolen. Those reports came out last week, and that has prevented messages between him and Lord Mandelson from being revealed. But there's been a breaking development in the last hour. What can you tell us?
Yeah, the Times newspaper is reporting that some more detail around this theft. It happened on October the 21st last year. Morgan McSweeney left a restaurant in central London, looked at his phone, was trying to just text people as you might do after a meeting. You haven't looked at your phone for a bit. Someone came along on a bicycle wearing a balaclava, we're told by the Times, and swiped the phone. Morgan McSweeney reported it lost to the police, but we now find out from the reporting here that the police did not not record any formal investigation. Officers did not speak to that man on screen in white tie there, Morgan McSweeney, directly because they were too busy. He was given a crime reference number and the case was closed. Now, McSweeney, for his part, was one of the most senior officials in government at the time. He was the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. He reported that theft in number 10. The device was shut down straight away and he was given a new device with the same number the following day. It will, I'm afraid, drive conspiracy theorists to wonder why on earth the government didn't want to investigate, why the police, I should say, not the government, the police didn't want to investigate any further. Some guy in a balaclava stealing his phone. Why did that happen? This phone is vitally important, I think, to the next leg of release, of the next volume of release of documents, messages on WhatsApp and text messages around the appointment of Peter Mandelson to be the ambassador to the States. I've been told by very senior figures that right now they are redacting WhatsApp messages from the team around Sir Keir Starmer, maybe even Sir Keir Starmer himself. This phone was vital to that. This will be seen as helping Morgan McSweeney, helping Peter Mandelson and reducing any risk of embarrassment to the government from what could be on that phone. So as we sit here, we understand that information from that phone, messages, cannot be recovered, and that is a blow to critics of the government and those who want to have full open book access to what happened about the appointment of Peter Mandelson.
Thank you very much for the update, Chris. You know, Mark, listening to this breaking news, I do find it completely astonishing. And look, I'm not anywhere near to the seniority and the importance to national security as someone like Morgan McSweeney. But, you know, a couple of weeks ago, a very similar thing happened to me. I was walking around in the streets. Two blokes, balaclavaed up on an e-bike, came up to me, tried to take my phone, and I did report it to the police. They told me that they weren't able to follow up due to various investigative issues. I had to fight on the phone with them, actually, to try and convince them to look at the CCTV, and they actually phoned me back a couple hours later to say that it wasn't pointing in the right direction on the street I was on. But for them to say that they are too busy, Mark White, to look into this issue with this man, Morgan McSweeney, that is a remarkable claim.
So that experience is the norm, Charlie. On the face of it, this whole thing has a real whiff about it, without a doubt. But I think the timing here is potentially important, and that's maybe something that Chris can help us out here with. Because if you have your phone stolen, then in all likelihood you are going to get that response from the police. They are too busy, really, to deal with that. They'll give you a crime number and you've got to go off and just claim it against your insurance. Very rarely will they respond if you persist and you have sort of obvious evidence as to where your phone might be and how it was taken. But in most cases, they're not going to do that. So one, I think what we need to know is just how much did Morgan McSweeney tell the police about who he was and the significance of his phone in terms of the very sensitive messages that will have been received and passed on by him through government channels and WhatsApp groups or whatever. If he didn't tell them that, then again, it's no surprise that they have just issued a crime number. The issue with regards to timing, and hopefully this is something Chris can help with, was the heat turning up on Morgan McSweeney at that time, Chris, in terms of needing to know what his WhatsApp messages said about the vetting of Lord Mandelson? It strikes me that that was actually into this year before that really became a real hot potato.
Yes, you're right, Tom. I mean, you're right there, Mark. Sorry. On October 21st last year, it's about 6 weeks after the resignation of Peter Mandelson in early September. He resigned, of course, about what was seen about him in the birthday book, this book given to Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday with messages, several pages of messages and photographs of Peter Mandelson in a dressing gown with Jeffrey Epstein. It also followed the disclosure of those links between Peter Mandelson and Epstein in those the JP Morgan case. But it's before, of course, the huge release of those 3 million documents in the Epstein files earlier this year. So, yes, pressure was building on McSweeney. Yes, we had an angry Sir Keir Starmer, annoyed about, frankly, the appointment of Peter Mandelson in the first place, and he took the advice on that from Matthew Doyle, his communications chief, and that man on the screen there, Morgan McSweeney. But the pressure, the damage of that evidence wasn't yet really known until early this year. But maybe Morgan McSweeney knew what was coming, but there's no suggestion, of course, that he arranged for this robbery or that it was any kind of conspiracy. It could simply have happened. It may well be, and I'll try and speak to McSweeney in the next hour or so. It may well be that he was trying to not ask for any special favours from the police. Simply did what a member of the public would do, like Charlie did, told the police they could do nothing. He moved on. That may have been the case, and that may be the simple case behind this.
OK, Chris Hope, thank you very much for your time and for that breaking news, and also Mark White for your analysis. You know, I do really find it so distressing that the police have to just close these cases and move on. There used to be a time where that level of theft was responded to more severely. Right, let's go back to this issue with the migrant crossings and the engagement with France. Let's speak now with the former Downing Street head of communications, James Lyons, for more on this. James, these negotiations are ongoing, and we also are expecting that Shabana Mahmood is hoping to tie performance to payments. Do you think that's the right move?
Good afternoon, Charlie. Thanks very much for having me on. Absolutely. I think this is a common sense measure from a common sense Home Secretary. Your correspondent was trying to dispute some of the Home Office figures just now, but the Home Office will tell you that 40,000 crossings have been stopped. So the arrangement we've had in place has been successful up to a point. Clearly, what Shabana wants to do is make sure that British taxpayers are getting value for money here.
Successful up to a point. It was recently just 19% success rate. It's not going as far as it should, not even close. Do you think that the pressure of finance will make a difference here, or do the French actually quite like it that all these migrants are crossing, leaving their responsibility in Calais and coming to the United Kingdom instead, but we have to pay, we have to house them in camps or in terrorist accommodation, in hotels? It becomes a British burden. You can see it, can't you? The French actually are quite happy for these crossings to take place.
Well, I think we've all seen scenes of them intervening on the beaches.
I've seen some scenes of them intervening, I think, and it just so happens to be that news cameras are there for those moments, right? It's always quite helpful that they've got a few journalists on the beach when that happens, right?
There are also often cameras there when migrants are landing in this country as well. So I think this is a well scrutinised issue, so you'd expect this to be covered. But look, I think this is, as ever, just one club in the bag, as it were. I was listening to watching GB News earlier on today, and you had the former UK Border Force Director General Tony Smith on, who was speaking about the ways in which Shabana Mahmood is trying to reduce the pull factors in this country, reducing asylum support, making it much harder to stay here permanently if you come here illegally, doubling the amount of time it takes to get indefinite leave to remain. So I think, you know, this is a major problem, and it's always going to take more than one initiative to solve it.
And Tony Smith obviously knows what he's talking about. He's praised those changes to the pull factors. But one of the problems that Shabana Mahmood has on this, of course, James, is that much of the Parliamentary Labour Party does not agree with her reforms. Do you think that this proposal, putting the onus on the French to stop it, is an area where perhaps she might get a bit more engagement and support from the backbenchers, who on occasion have appeared almost totally in opposition to some of the changes, particularly on ILR that you raised, for example?
Well, I mean, I think this proposal from Shabana, and we have yet to see if she'll manage to get it over the line. But if she can link this to performance, I think it deserves cross-party support, and I very much hope it will get it.
OK, James Lyons, the former Downing Street head of communications, thank you very much for your time here. Now, a Home Office spokesperson said, "We do not comment on anonymous briefings, and we are building flexibility and innovation into any new deal with the French to ensure long-term value for money and a real impact on small boat crossings." But please do let me know what you think about those mooted proposals. Is it right that we're not going to let the French get any cash until they actually step in and stop more. The boat's 19% success rate recently. Not quite good enough, is it? Right, still to come here on the Martin Daubney Show, the ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Callicane continues to shock and appall. We'll be live from outside the inquiry next with all the latest details. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. See you after the break.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversations.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
We'll be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement? You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel. As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 4. I'm Charlie Peters, covering for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, the ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Callicane continues to shock and appall. Well, today we heard that the partner of Nottingham victim Ian Coates was told by police to buy a dog. That's after we learnt that his body remained at the scene for 15 hours. Well, joining us now is GB News national reporter Will Godley for more on this. Will, what else did we hear at the inquiry today?
Well, Charlie, good afternoon to you. Yeah, the inquiry this week is hearing from the families of the victims. Of course, they are, as you say, Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates. And today it was the turn of Ian Coates' family to speak in this inquiry. We also heard from his sons, James and Lee Coates, and both of them very critical in the time it took the police to inform them that their father had been killed in this attack. James speaking at the inquiry earlier today, saying he was aware of this incident that happened on a road not too far from where he lives. He was aware that somebody had died, but what he didn't know was the person who was killed was his father. Of course, this attack happened in the early hours of the morning on June the 13th, 2023, but it wasn't until after 3 p.m. when James first heard his father had died, and it wasn't from the police or anyone official. It was from a message on Instagram from a family friend, and he initially thought this was a spam message, it was a hoax, somebody saying, "I'm so sorry to hear about what's happened to your dad, call me." It was only when James questioned this message and the friend said, "No, you need to call me," when he was made aware that his dad had died. But at that time he was informed that he had died from a road traffic accident and not in fact from Valdo Calacane stabbing him. And of course it took another couple of hours, we were hearing today, for the police to reach out to the sons, James and Lee, and they only got in touch with them some 10 minutes before a public press conference where the police were updating people in Nottingham and the press about the events that had happened in the early hours of June the 13th. And Lee, speaking today at the inquiry, said that claims officers were making on television, saying they were doing everything they could for the bereaved families, were rude and disingenuous, saying that he felt abandoned and overwhelmed and that they were an afterthought for police. Well, we also heard, as you say, Charlie, from Ian Coates' partner, Elaine Newton, and she told the inquiry today how police first told her that her partner Ian Coates had died in a road traffic accident, and it was only 4 hours later when family liaison officers were asking her about what she knew about his death when she found out that he had in fact actually been stabbed. She told the inquiry today that those officers looked shocked on their faces, telling her, "You got the information wrong, you've been told the wrong information, Ian's been killed, Ian's been stabbed." And she was criticising Nottinghamshire Police's excuses at the inquiry today when she's been asking for years now why Valdo Calacane was on the streets for over an hour after, of course, he stabbed Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar when he then went on to kill Ian Coates. And she was telling the inquiry today that they were just giving excuses, saying there was not enough police officers around that morning and saying that Nottingham is a big place.
Well, Godley, it's astonishing some of the details that have come out of this inquiry, and so brutal for the family of Ian Coates, who was just 6 months away from retiring when this happened. And one of his sons, James, talking about how it took so long for the police to get in touch with him, saying that the police logs showed that his number was available to them at around 12 minutes to 8 in the morning. And he said, "We didn't get a call until around 5 p.m, which he said was disgusting. National reporter Will Godley joining us there outside the inquiry. Thank you very much for that report, Will. Right, there's still lots more to come between now and 5 o'clock. There's been an explosion of so-called sickfluencers on social media, fueling Britain's worklessness crisis because they are coaching people on how to lay it on thick to claim maximum benefits. It's a big trend all over social media. I'll get you up to date on that. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story at 4:30. Donald Trump says Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there's a very good chance of a deal. But Iran is pushing back hard. Tehran calls the claims fake news, vowing to fight until complete victory as missile strikes continue on both sides.
But we'll see what happens. I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
More explosions overnight in Tel Aviv and in Tehran as the conflict enters its 25th day. Iran launched fresh missile attacks while Israel says it hit 50 targets and will continue strikes in Iran and in Lebanon. Here, the Chancellor has warned the economic fallout of the Middle East war could be significant. Rachel Reeves says contingency plans are underway to support households, with new powers to crack down on companies exploiting rising energy prices. In other news, transgender girls have been given until September to leave girl guiding. The organisation says it's aligning with last year's Supreme Court ruling, but campaigners say the move is heartbreaking. The King has become patron of a charity protecting British Jews from extremism. It comes after 4 Jewish ambulances were set on fire in Golders Green. Police are probing possible Iran-linked involvement. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at 5.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have a band of heavy rain moving southeast, accompanied by strong winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but showers follow along with bright spells, albeit with a cold wind coming from the north-northwest. That's because we've got one area of low pressure clearing, sending its weather front south, with this cold air tucking in behind. Now, over the next few hours, the heavy rain will affect western and then southern parts of the UK, clearing late evening and followed swiftly by frequent showers or even longer spells of rain in places. But with the cold air arriving at the same time, it's going to be a chilly start to Wednesday, with these showers falling as sleet and snow, especially over higher parts of Scotland. Sleet and hail mixed in with the rain showers elsewhere across the United Kingdom. And there will be frequent showers from the word go, as you can see, especially for central and southern parts of England into East Wales. Some brighter spells in between the showers, but we'll all notice the cold wind during the morning, a stark contrast compared with recent days. Now, across Scotland, some of the snow will be building up over higher parts, especially above 200 or 300 metres. At lower levels, it's a right mixture of rain, sleet, hail and snow. And by the afternoon, things warm up a little, so any snow confined to the hills and mountains of Scotland, as well as the Pennines, Peak District, Welsh Mountains. At lower levels, we'll continue to see rain and hail showers, but interspersed by sunny spells. However, despite the blue skies in places, we'll continue to feel the cold wind, and feels like temperatures will be 1 to 4 Celsius widely. Now, into the evening, showers become fewer and clear spells become more widespread. As a result, it's a frosty start to Thursday before it turns cloudier later on, with another spell of rain arriving from the west.
Thank you, Britain, for all of you who listen to GB News Radio.
Whether you're at home or on the go, you're making us Britain's news channel and Britain's radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. High winds are affecting the A9000 Forth Road Bridge, so take extra care. In North Yorkshire, the A66 eastbound between the M6 and the junction with the A1M is closed to high-sided vehicles until 4 this afternoon. In Cumbria, the A66 westbound between the A1M and the junction with the M6 has the same restriction until 1:48 this afternoon. On the A470, there is an accident in both directions. And on the trains, Avanti, West Coast and ScotRail report major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back, I'm Charlie Peters, sitting in for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, a report has found that a growing wave of sickfluencers on social media is fueling Britain's worklessness crisis. Now, these sickfluencers coach people on how to lay it on thick in order to maximise benefit payouts. Well, joining us now is the head of social care and health at Policy Exchange, Gareth Lyon, who published the report. Gareth, thanks very much for joining us here on GB News. What have you uncovered in this report?
Thank you, Charlie. It's good to be here. So we found some really concerning activity, which is putting the whole integrity of our health and disability benefit system at risk. As you mentioned in the intro, we've found extensive coaching, giving people model answers, telling them how to lay it on thick or to make the best possible case to get the biggest possible benefit payouts. We've found people receiving support not just through online communities, but also through sickfluencers, people who specialise in pushing these messages out there, who are being promoted through social media algorithms. And we've increasingly found AI playing a role, helping people to draft answers and to make sure that they are most likely to receive these benefits. Now, all of this is happening because the health and disability benefit system doesn't actually require, in many cases, the medical evidence or the in-person assessment, which would act as safeguards to prevent this kind of activity happening.
There's in-person assessments. I remember there were a cause of great controversy when Ian Duncan Smith was insisting on them in governments gone by. Has that weakened since Labour came into power? Do they hold some responsibility in government for sort of easing the process at which people can game the system? Or is this more about just basically an improvement in social media connectivity, people finding it easier to share these tips on how to sort of rinse the taxpayer?
So this is definitely a case of the system not keeping up with technology, keeping up with the pace of technology. So if you were to go back 15, 20 years ago, if someone wanted support on health or disability benefit claims, and they had a legitimate reason to be claiming, they might go to their local citizens' advice or go to a charity with specialism in the area and get that kind of support. But that's not where people tend to go to get support and advice anymore. They've started by going to online forums, which are often dominated by questions about how do I make the biggest possible claim, but also people who might not even previously have considered themselves to have a disability and are being encouraged to think that way because sickfluencers are putting these messages out there in very prominent terms, saying things like, you can get up to £62,000 by going through this process for personal independence payments or access to work. So we found that's really concerning. And again, the system just hasn't adapted. It's stayed extremely static. It's very form-based. It's very online. And all that makes it an absolute sitting duck when we're in the face of these technological advances.
And Gareth, some of the examples that have come out from your report are astonishing. Some of the language that people use, talking about how to game the system so openly. What was the most brazen example you found? And which media platforms were you discovering most of these attempts to game the system?
Yeah, so you can find this content on Instagram, on TikTok, or many of the major social media channels. But we've found cases where people are actively promoting the names of their channels and platforms by reference to the amount of money that they can get. So, as I mentioned, get £62,000 in payments or ADHD money, that sort of thing. And then people are talked through with model answers and step-by-step guides for this is how you maximise your chances of payouts. And what we're also seeing is many of these influencers promoting particular products that they're linked with and encouraging people to apply for the taxpayer to pay for those to be provided. Many of these influencers have been challenged about this before, and it's very clear that people, because they're not required to have medical evidence of these conditions, we're relying entirely on people self-certifying and saying that I do have this mental health condition and should be receiving this payment. So the safeguards are really concerning.
Yeah, well, Gareth, we had a response to this from the Department for Work and Pensions. They said they're fixing the broken welfare system that was inherited by the Labour government, and also they say that they are cracking down on benefit fraud, and they've also encouraged anyone who suspects it to report it to the department. What is your response to those two claims, that they're fixing the broken welfare system and also that they are cracking down on benefit fraud?
So it's really encouraging that they are taking this issue seriously. They need to. But again, the figures that the DWP are putting out there don't go anything like far enough. I think we've talked about the rise in disability claims, the amount that people are claiming. So if you go back to 2024 figures, 16.8 million people describe themselves as disabled, which is a quarter of the population. Actually, those figures seem to have increased since then. We've seen the benefits bill going up. I don't think people have confidence in this now. And we do need to have a system that people can have confidence in if it's going to maintain the integrity that it needs to have for it to be a sustainable system.
You know, Gareth, it's estimated that economic inactivity caused by ill health is costing Britain about £212 billion a year. That's about 7% of our GDP. Now, much of that, of course, will be legitimate. There are people who cannot work and need support. What concerns me, of course, is the people who are gaming the system, trying to coach people how to do this. But what really concerns me are those people, Gareth, who perhaps did not think they were disabled and aren't disabled, but as a consequence of seeing these claims about money and seeing all of these symptoms perhaps being pushed on social media, they may start to convince themselves that they need these payments and that actually these coaches aren't just teaching people how to fraudulently claim benefits through a system which is clearly far too easy to deal with, but actually it's worse than that, because it's causing people to perhaps consider themselves as disabled when they're not.
That's right, and it's really not good for them or for the taxpayer in the long run for more people to think that they can't be doing things, and it's tend to be identifying in the way that sick influencers are pushing these messages out there. We think it'd be far better that if we had a system which depended more on medical evidence and actual proof that someone does have a condition first. But as I mentioned before, the real dangerous situation here is that you are having messages being pushed out there through social media, extensively promoted through the algorithms, which are telling people that actually this is the big prize if you choose to identify yourself that way. So more people are possibly going to start considering themselves to have these disabilities, but also by setting the expectations so high, things like £62,000 in terms of payouts, people are more likely to try and ask for more than they necessarily need. Again, in another part of the report, we say that actually in many cases, people shouldn't necessarily be receiving financial payouts, but they should be receiving support in kind, which will help people to go back to work or to remain more independent.
Clearly the system truly is broken if people are being incentivised to think of themselves as disabled, and with £212 billion being spent on this, it really is remarkable that medical evidence is not required in so many cases. But Gareth Lyon, you're head of health and social care at the Policy Exchange think tank, thank you very much for your time reflecting on that report you released. Now, moving on here on GB News, because coming up next we'll be paying tribute to the heroic Second World War veteran John Dennett, who has died at the age of 101. We're speaking to someone very close to him very shortly. But before we do that, let's get a check on the European weather forecast.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A mixed picture weather-wise across southern Europe through tomorrow. We do have some showery rain affecting Greece. None of that looks especially heavy, and it is clearing away. Meanwhile, towards Italy, whilst tomorrow's looking largely dry, Storm Deborah is going to arrive overnight and into Thursday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, even some significant mountain snow. Meanwhile, towards the Canaries and Madeira, well, it's been very unsettled recently. A shift in the wind direction does mean parts towards the southwest will be a bit more sheltered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
To like that medals awarded to our heroes, our boys in First World War, are being bought and melted down by scrap dealers because of the rising price of silver. Now, antique shop War & Son have launched a campaign to save the medals from the melting pot, and they've already rescued more than 160. Now, joining me now is Stephen Noir, who is director of War & Son. Stephen, if I can use your first name, good afternoon to you. This is a very sad story, that these medals are being sold down. They are part of our history.
Indeed, Andrew. Thanks so much for bringing focus to this campaign, first of all. I do think that overwhelming kind of emotion is sadness. It's not an anger aimed at anyone. I think that in these times, economic times, it's we really have to try and keep the education going, and we really have to work out what our priorities are. And I think this just comes from, sadly, a lack of awareness and something that shouldn't be happening, that you can kind of understand the reasons but underpinning why it is happening. So really, with the campaign that we're putting together isn't a massive departure from what we do as a business anyway. But if we could just get across to the public that it's the stories behind each medal. It's an ounce of silver, or just over an ounce of silver, but it's a medal that's named on the edge of the medal. It's named to the rim, and you can research these stories. So each one is a person, each one is a story, and I think so if they end up in the smelting pot, they disappear forever and just become a name possibly on a memorial, and that sacrifice is lost forever. And it just needn't happen as far as we're concerned. So that's why we've committed our pledge.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, sitting in for Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, heroic Navy gunner and friend of GB News, John Dennett, has sadly died at the age of 101. He fought at every historic Allied landing in Europe during the Second World War, and John always honoured his comrades and insisted the lucky ones grow old.
We must never forget what happened years ago through all the wars that enabled us to be where we are.
Well, after the war, John founded Ashville Football Club in Merseyside, which is still going on 75 years later. A minute's applause will be held at the match on Saturday in honour of their modest hero. Well, joining me now is friend and chairman of Ashville Football Club, Phil Simmons. Phil, thank you so much for joining us on GB News this afternoon. Now, a total hero, of course, John, founding your football club as well. What was his connection to the club like in the many years after the war?
Well, first of all, what a man. What a man he was. And you've set me off with a little video at the start there, so I do apologise. He had a massive presence about him. He's an unbelievable character. He loved the idea of having a grassroots football team for his nephew at the time. For his wife's brother. He set that up. He joined forces with friends and family to get the club going where it was. He bought a plot of land and he built it from there. And over the years, they had success through different leagues. But his main focus has always been to maintain the club as a youth set up for grassroots football, so the kids in the local area have got somewhere to go. He took so much pride in every May we have an Ashville Youth Tournament. And up until last year, and it would have been the same this year, he was there on the Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, presenting the children with the trophies that they won and the medals. He just loved everything about the club. It's a heartache at the moment. It's hard. Saturday's going to be especially hard. There's always a routine. Whenever you turn up at the club, first thing you do is go and see John, see if he's okay, because he lived on site at the club. He had the best view of the pitch from his window. But at 2 o'clock, 2:05, you'd go up, do the team sheet. He'd ask about the team sheet, who was in the team. He'd tell you about old players. And you just have a good gas with him. It was just, it's going to be difficult, but what a man.
It'll be difficult, Phil, but the John Dennett legacy will live on at the club. And how are you going to ensure that his memory is sustained through the youth tournament? Obviously, he'll be honoured this Saturday at the club, but you'll continue to honour him, won't you?
100%. John's legacy will never be forgotten at Ashville. He's done it for 75 years. When I first got involved with football about 9 years ago with Ashville, it was only through my son wanting to play football. Later on, I got asked if I'd help out as a volunteer, and that's all those people are at the club, volunteers. And when you think about what John's done for the country, what he's done for the club, you put your hand up straight away, say, yeah, I'll volunteer, I'll do it, not a problem. There's such a love story about the club. If somebody was there to narrate it, you could make some film out of it, I promise you. And people would have tissues. It's just a romantic story about Asheville.
Well,
but the youth tournaments.
I really hope that there are some screenwriters listening in on this. As you said, that John Dennett, what a legend, and so glad that he'll be honoured this weekend. Phil Simmons, the chairman of Asheville Football Club, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Stay with us here on GB News. Let's get to the weather now first.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have a band of heavy rain moving southeast, accompanied by strong winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but showers follow along with bright spells, albeit with a cold wind coming from the north-northwest. That's because we've got one area of low pressure clearing, sending its weather front south, with this cold air tucking in behind. Now, over the next few hours, the heavy rain will affect western and then southern parts of the UK, clearing late evening and followed swiftly by frequent showers or even longer spells of rain in places. But with the cold air arriving at the same time, it's going to be a chilly start to Wednesday, with these showers falling as sleet and snow, especially over higher parts of Scotland. Sleet and hail mixed in with the rain showers elsewhere across the United Kingdom. And there will be frequent showers from the word go, as you can see, especially for central and southern parts of England into East Wales. Some brighter spells in between the showers, but we'll all notice the cold wind during the morning, a stark contrast compared with recent days. Now, across Scotland, some of the snow will be building up over higher parts, especially above 200 or 300 metres. At lower levels, it's a right mixture of rain, sleet, hail and snow. And by the afternoon, things warm up a little, so any snow confined to the hills and mountains of Scotland, as well as the Pennines, Peak District, Welsh Mountains. At lower levels, we'll continue to see rain and hail showers, but interspersed by sunny spells. However, despite the blue skies in places, we'll continue to feel the cold wind, and feels like temperatures will be 1 to 4 Celsius widely. Now, into the evening, showers become fewer and clear spells become more widespread. As a result, it's a frosty start to Thursday before it turns cloudier later on, with another spell of rain arriving from the west.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M80 southbound off-slip at Junction 1 is closed while a police incident is handled. On the M11 southbound, the exit slip at Junction 8 has a broken down vehicle with one of 2 lanes closed. On the A470 in both directions between Rhyadr and Newbridge on Wye, there has been an accident. In Wiltshire, the A36 southbound between the A360 and the junction with the A338 is congested, with delays of around 10 minutes. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and ScotRail report major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9 spelling double T. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Hello, it is, what is the day today? It's the 24th of March, it's Tuesday. I'm Charlie Peters and you are watching Martin Daubney on GB News. We're broadcasting live across the United Kingdom with all the very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on the show today. Well, Shabana Mahmood is preparing to hand more cash to the French to stop the boats as our eye-watering £500 million deal teeters on collapse. But with new damning figures that show France is actually getting worse at stopping migrants crossing, is it time to stop paying and defund the useless French? Elsewhere, an arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that Iranian sleeper cells have infiltrated Britain. We'll have all the latest analysis on that developing story. And the ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Calacane continues to shock and appall. Today we heard that the partner of Nottingham victim Ian Coates was told by the police to buy a dog. That's after we learnt that his body remained at the scene for 15 hours. So how much more systemic failure can those families endure? We'll also be speaking to Brian Rowe, who has dreamt of being a bin man since he was just 2 years old. He says he is heartbroken after being rejected twice from the job, despite completing a 9-month internship for free. Great to have your company this afternoon for the next hour. I was a bit confused at the top there because on the auto cue it said, hello, I'm Ben Leo. I said, it's good enough just being Martin Daubney for the afternoon. I can't be him as well. But it's great to have you for the next hour. So much to dive into. We'll be getting straight across to the latest on the northern French coast, of course, with this Channel Migrant dispute. But also, very happy to say, we'll be joined by Katie Amess in this hour. She's just confirmed she'll be speaking to us. This comes after it was announced that Sir Robert Buckland KC will be leading a review into her father's death. That is, of course, Sir David Amess, killed by an Islamist terrorist while he was at a constituency surgery in Essex. Katie Amess will be speaking for the first time since that announcement was made yesterday. I'm very happy to say that she'll be speaking, of course, to GB News to give her reaction to that announcement. So please do get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. And all the stories we'll be covering today. What do you want to say to Katie Amess, who has been so brave throughout this process? Very much looking forward to having her on the programme. So much to get through, so let's cross over now to Sam Francis for all the latest news headlines.
Charlie, thank you. A very good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock, the top story tonight. Well, the RAF has shot down more than a dozen attack drones in Iraq in its largest single night of interceptions so far, according to officials. 14 drones were destroyed over Erbil as UK forces respond to escalating threats across the region. It comes as Donald Trump says Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there's now a very good chance of a deal. But Iran is dismissing that outright as fake news and vowing to fight on until what it calls complete victory. Well, missiles continue to fly on day 25 of the conflict. Iran launching fresh strikes on central Israel, including Tel Aviv, while Israel says it hit 50 targets in Tehran overnight. Sirens have also sounded across the rest of the Gulf. In Bahrain and Kuwait, there have been interceptions of missiles as the conflict widens beyond the immediate front lines. And despite talk of diplomacy from Washington, both Iran and Israel are doubling down, continuing strikes not just in Iran, but against Hezbollah in Lebanon on a second front. Here, meanwhile, the government is warning the economic impact of the Middle East conflict could be significant, with fresh plans to shield households from rising costs. Rachel Reeves says oil and gas prices remain high and inflation could reach up to 3.5% in the coming months. She's announced stronger powers for regulators to crack down on companies accused of profiteering during the crisis. And she also confirmed moves to boost energy security, including investment in renewables and backing domestic oil and gas.
And I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
Let's just bring you a breaking update from Russia. We're hearing reports that the Kremlin has launched a rare daytime assault on Ukraine, firing more than 400 drones across the country in Lviv on the east of Ukraine. Just 40 of Ukraine, just 40 miles from the Polish border. At least 13 people have been injured after strikes hit the city centre, including a residential building. Ukrainian officials say the attack targeted a crowded city centre in broad daylight, calling for tougher sanctions against Moscow. We're also hearing reports from Poland that they are scrambling fighter jets, placing air defence systems on maximum alert as the Russian drones are operating close to NATO airspace. Here, transgender girls have been given until September to leave Girl Guiding. The organisation says membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling, defining sex as biological sex in equality law. Affected members will have until the 6th of September to leave or move to alternative roles. Girl Guiding says it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. 4 replacement ambulances have been deployed in Golders Green after Jewish community vehicles were destroyed in a suspected anti-Semitic arson attack. The London Ambulance Service units were delivered today, with the government stepping in to loan vehicles and cover the cost of those that were lost. The attack has intensified concerns over rising anti-Semitism, with the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch saying the UK must get a lot more serious. She's calling for tougher action, including banning some protests and targeting those who incite violence.
We are also seeing an increase, and to be honest, it's happening across Western Europe, an increase of people coming from countries where there is a culture of anti-Semitism, hatred against Jews. People with that particular historical culture are of increasing number here. So this is why I said we need to toughen our immigration policy. It's not enough that people come here to work. They need to be able to abide by our norms and our values, and if they can't, they should be sent back. We need to start cracking down on the sources of the anti-Semitism, not just the symptoms. It's not just enough to say, let's have more security guards and a bit more money. Let's tackle the root of it.
Those are this evening's headlines. I'll be back with more in half an hour. Now, though, let's get straight back to Charlie.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you, Sam. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to introduce 76 EU rules into British law as part of a move toward closer alignment with the single market. So we're asking, is this Labour's big Brexit betrayal? Joining me now is GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Chris, what can you tell us about these breaking updates?
Yeah, well, this is a drumbeat of getting closer to the European Union, which was signalled last week by Rachel Reeves in her May's lecture that I attended in the City of London. Now, today in the House of Commons, Rachel Reeves has announced that we will have a phytosanitary and sanitary deal with the European Union by the end of this year. Now, that means further alignment on the risks of additives, contaminants, toxins and others too, and that the food we eat will be much more in line with the European Union. That's a good and a bad thing, arguably. A very good thing for food producers. We can export and import foods across our border, but there are concerns from those who believe in a Brexit and giving less aligned with the European Union. We become more closely aligned with them. That's because within top of government there are battles here about how closer we should get to the European Union. Now, there's a story by the Daily Telegraph broken in the past half an hour. They say that there'll be 76 European Union directives the UK will opt back into at the King's Speech. We're expecting that King's Speech, which will set out the legislation the government wants to do over the next 18 months to 2 years, to take place in the week after the local elections on May the 6th. So that's interesting. We've got this battle with the senior people in government. David Amess saying we should go back, align more closely with Europe. We've got Sadiq Khan saying let's campaign to get back into the European Union at the next election, which could be as soon as barely 2 years away in 2028. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. So yet again, Brexit hasn't gone away. There'll be should be a European Union UK summit in May. That'll be interesting too, to see how close your line we get there. And that is where the UK is going. The feeling on the top of government is that it hasn't really worked. Brexit hasn't been allowed to work, obviously, by the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine. But despite that, they think we're better off closer with our biggest trading partner. Of course, not all GB News viewers, or indeed those on the right of politics, would agree with this.
Better Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that update. Let's cross over now to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, with some more breaking news. Mark, what can you tell us?
Well, this is a charge or charges that have been brought against an extremist and asylum seeker from Morocco who people might remember was convicted of the murder of a 70-year-old pensioner in Hartlepool last year. That man at the centre of this is Moroccan national, 47-year-old Ahmed Ali Alid. He is convicted of the murder of Terence Kearney, who, as I say, was a 70-year-old just passing by in the street outside the asylum hospital, or not far from the asylum hostel where this Moroccan was living with some other asylum seekers. There was also one asylum seeker who was stabbed and injured in an altercation that took place inside this asylum accommodation. Before then, Ahmed Ali Alid went out into the street and murdered this pensioner. He was sentenced to life in prison. Well, we're told by counter-terrorism policing that he has now been charged in connection with 2 incidents in which prison officers were allegedly attacked. One at Full Sutton prison in East Yorkshire on the 8th of August last year, and the other at HMP Wakefield just over 2 months later. He has been charged with 3 offences: a charge of attempted murder, a charge of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and also the possession of an offensive weapon. This man, Ahmed Ali Alid, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court in West London tomorrow.
Mark White, thank you very much for that breaking news. Right, it's 12 minutes past 5, and let's move on now, because the Home Secretary is preparing to hand more cash to the French to help stop the boats. The existing £500 million agreement is about to expire and has been criticised as more crossing attempts are successful rather than thwarted. 2 weeks ago, the French stopped just 68 migrants from crossing. That's compared to the 357 that successfully made the trip. That's just a 19% success rate for the French police. So, is it finally time to stop paying and defund the French? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the journalist Alexander Seal, and the journalist Peter Allen. Good afternoon to you both. We're still paying the French, and they seem to be just getting worse. So let's start with you, Peter. Do you think we should maintain this deal?
I spend a lot of time with French police, not least of all around Calais and Dunkirk. I was with a lot of them last week on the beaches. They have an extremely difficult job. It's not a job that they can do particularly well. We know that. We look at the figures. But they would argue, and this is what I hear on the ground, that the job is very much like any policing job. They are not knights. They're certainly not knights of the sea. They're not people who can stop crime. They are people who can limit crime, and they can achieve some kind of results against the people smugglers who are primarily behind this terrible trade in human lives. And they say they need as much money as possible to do it. Again, they are the ones who are doing most of the work, and the more money they can get to do it, the better. Ergo, they believe that the more money that comes from British coffers, the better, Charlie.
But Alex, we can't just keep sinking cash into this process, can we? £500 million, the deal signed by the Conservatives, has no performance indicator, so they just get the money regardless of the number of boats that they stop. Alexander Seal, would you like that to change? Do you think that the French should only get the cash if they can prove that they can stop more than, say, just 19%, as we saw recently?
Well, if Britain is being asked to renew another huge financial package with France, where is the evidence that the current model is working well enough to justify it? The last 3-year deal was worth around £476 million, and crossings in 2025 were still above 41,000. And ministers are now reportedly trying to renegotiate on a payment by a results basis. That tells you that the government itself is not satisfied. I'm not against cooperation with France. Obviously, we need cooperation with France, but there is a difference between cooperation and writing bigger checks while the results remain poor. If interception rates are falling, if arrivals are still very high, and even if the Home Secretary wants tougher terms, then why should British taxpayers just accept more of the same?
And Peter Allen, that's a good point, isn't it? Why should we accept more of the same? Because the French interceptions actually peaked at 50% in the weeks following this initial cash handover. We gave them £478 million in 2023. They stopped over half, and then just last year that figure had dropped to 35%. They're getting worse and worse as the time goes on. Is that because their policing tactics have shifted? Have they run out of the money? What's causing that, Peter Allen? Because at the start, when they were given the money, perhaps with all the focus on it, suddenly they could do the job. 50% has taken such a tumble since then.
Well, I certainly see all Alex's points, and I would agree with many of them. But the point remains that the amount of immigration on those beaches is increasing. Remember, before it was all through the Channel Tunnel itself. It was on the ferries, it was on lorries and the like. This is a relatively new way of getting to Britain, and it's been increasing year by year, the amount of boats crossing, and police in France have to react to that. Remember, France is a country with 8 terrestrial borders. It has a massive problem with illegal immigration. This particular border is just one of them. And it would argue that if it is putting so many resources into this particular area of its country at the behest of the British, the French continually argue that it's much more of a problem for the British than it is for the French, and the British should have to pay for it. It's really just a question of economics. It is a question of increased numbers making the attempts to get to Britain on that border, and the money has to be made available for it from somewhere. And I would argue that if the British didn't pay, the French certainly wouldn't.
Alexander Seal, we've just heard from Peter Allen saying this is a relatively new process for illegal crossings. It's been the best part of a decade. This crisis has been going on, for 8 years now since the first major crossings took place. We've seen well over 100,000 arrive since then. Surely it shouldn't take so long and so much money to deal with this problem, costing us billions every year in hotel accommodation, in HMOs, in camps, the £500 million we're sending to the French as well. there are solutions to this, but they are solutions that governments don't want to pull the levers on, or indeed get stuck in legal quagmires trying to worry about them. The solution perhaps isn't more money to France, just don't accept them when they arrive, or immediately deport them as soon as that crossing is made.
Yes, I think ministers are caught in a contradiction here. On the one hand, they want to tell the public this partnership with France is essential. On the other, they're now trying to renegotiate it because they clearly think the current terms are poor. So which is it? If the current deal is good value, why demand payment by results? And if it isn't good value, why would we simply renew it? That seems to me the central issue. From the French point of view, this is framed as a cooperative anti-smuggling arrangement and part of a broader rapprochement with Britain. But from the British point of view, the political question is different. Are we paying too much for too little? Those are not the same question.
Peter, I'll come back to you then. I think that point just made before, that this whole thing, we could stop paying a single pound towards the French. If we had a proper deterrent in place, we wouldn't need to give the French any money because no crossings would be made. If people knew that as soon as they got on a small boat or pushed a craft out into the channel and attempted to reach Britain, if they knew that the second their feet touched the ground on the United Kingdom, that they would be picked up, put on a plane and sent elsewhere, there would be no more crossings and there'd be no more need to pay for the French.
Well, I can say that pretty much everybody in France would agree with you. You speak to politicians of left and right in the Pas-de-Calais, the area of France that is most affected by this. They call Britain El Dorado. They say that anybody attempting to get to Britain, when they arrive, they are given housing benefits, they're given homes, they're given hotels to stay in. They can work in the black economy if they can't get jobs legally. They are much more likely to get asylum in Britain than they are in France. You look at the figures, there are far more applications in France for asylum each year, but people are far less successful in gaining asylum here in France than they are in Britain. I can tell you, having lived in the French Republic for 20 years, that trying to access French social security, even if you're a French citizen at the beginning, is pretty hard, let alone if you're not a French citizen, if you don't have an address, if you don't even have a hotel you're staying in. You're absolutely right. The biggest problem is the welcome that migrants, legal migrants, are getting when they arrive in Britain. Just quickly on your point about it not being a new way of getting across, actually, small boats are a relatively new way of getting across if you look at them compared to the other ways that were being used to get across, again, through the Channel Tunnel, in the back of lorries. Huge amounts of money was put into stopping that. And the French would argue that huge amounts of money need to be continued to be put into trying to stop the boats if we haven't got the kind of deterrence that we're talking about in place in El Dorado, as they call it.
All right, Peter Allen, Alexander Seal, thank you both very much for your time and insight this afternoon. Well, a Home Office spokesperson has said in response that we do not comment on anonymous briefings. That's about the reports about what Shabana Mahmood might be pushing for. And they say we are building flexibility and innovation into any new deal with the French to ensure long-term value for money and a real impact on small boat crossings. Right, it's 22 minutes past 5 and still to come here on the Martin Daubney Show. The ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Calocane continues to shock and appall. We'll be live from outside the inquiry next. Our reporter Will Godley's been getting all the latest detail from a truly shocking day of hearings. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. See you in a moment.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, sitting in for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, the ongoing inquiry into the triple killings by psychopath Valdo Calacane continues to shock. Well, joining me now is GB News national reporter Will Godley, who has all the latest from the inquiry. Will, what did we learn today?
Well, Charlie, yeah, this inquiry now going on for a number of weeks, and during the inquiry we've heard, haven't we, from police officers, NHS staff, university staff, and also those who knew Valdo Calacane. But this week it's the turn of the victims' families, and today it was the sons of Ian Coates, the 65-year-old school caretaker, one of three who were killed in this attack by Valdo Calacane back in June 2023. He, of course, was killed more than an hour after Valdo Calacane stabbed to death university students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar. And the sons, James and Lee, in the inquiry today started by reading a statement informing the inquiry about why they wanted to speak today. Lee, Ian's son, said, "I stand here today to fight for my dad. His life mattered. He deserved better than what happened to him, and I will not stop saying that until it is acknowledged, not just in words, but in meaningful change." And James said he had been astonished so far at what has come out of this inquiry. He said, "Over the last 2.5 years, I thought I'd heard it all, from missed opportunities, misconduct, clinical mistakes and institutional laziness. But unfortunately, more revelations are coming out each week, and more revelations came out today as well, as the sons gave evidence in the inquiry, both very critical of the police when it came to the delay in informing them of how long it took them to inform them that their father had been stabbed to death. They told the inquiry today that the police had their number before 8 o'clock in the morning, but it took them till around 5 p.m. to get in touch with them and tell them, Charlie, that their father had died.
Will Godley, our national reporter at the Nottingham inquiry today in central London, thank you very much for that report. Right, it's 28 minutes past 5, and let's move on now because the former Conservative Justice Secretary, Sir Robert Buckland, will lead an independent review into failings by the state prior to the murder of the MP, Sir David Amess. And we're joined now by Sir David's daughter, Katie Amess, live from Los Angeles. Katie, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon or your morning. Please, can you tell me your reaction, first and foremost, to this announcement that came yesterday, a letter to you from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. What does it mean to you to have this announcement?
It means so much because I've now been fighting since 2021 to try and get some of the answers. And, you know, just watching the news story before me with the Nottingham inquiry, I mean, these things are massive failings of the state and they just aren't being addressed, and they just want people to go away and stop asking the questions. So I'm so glad that the Nottingham families are going to be getting their answers. I know that we haven't been granted the inquiry, we've only been granted a review. Hopefully we can get the answers through that review, and I very much welcome an ongoing process with Robert Buckland, and hopefully we can get the answers through that. But if we can't, then I will be going forwards and pushing for an inquiry, just like what the Nottingham family had to do. So we're very pleased that they've finally chosen somebody. I mean, it's taken all this time, but if we don't get the answers, then I will keep on fighting.
You must be so inspired by the families of the Nottingham inquiry. They kept pushing for that investigation, and that what they're seeing now could only have been achieved through a statutory public inquiry, with people being compelled to give evidence. They're forced to take to the stand and be questioned by a senior lawyer or judge. That's what's taking place for them. You're inspired by that, Katie, and you want to have the same fight if it's necessary.
Massively, because they were just shut down for years and they weren't being given the answers and they were just fobbed off. And now they're finally getting the answers that they deserve. And to not tell the victims' families for 8 hours that their father had been killed is just an absolute disgrace. So hopefully with my father's case, Sir Robert will be able to get through to some of the answers that we need. And as I say, if he doesn't, then I will just be coming back again, because I am going to get these answers. And it's not just important to my family, it's important for all of the citizens in the UK, because if this can happen to a member of parliament at his constituency surgery, it can happen to any one of us. And the fact that there isn't more outrage and more getting to the bottom of things and more rules being implemented and procedures to stop this happening again is just absolutely diabolical. So I am going to get those answers, whether it be through this review or whether it be me pushing for an inquiry. I will get those answers and we will stop this happening to other people.
Katie, it's clear your demand for that transparency and accountability, that's shining through. And of course, a Prevent Learning review last year revealed that your father's killer had been exited from the Prevent programme, the counter-extremism programme, too early. Do you think there has been accountability over what was revealed there? Do you think people have been made to answer questions?
No, absolutely not. We don't know why that person made the decision to release the guy too early, who was overseeing that decision, what checks there were in place to make sure they didn't make mistakes like this, why a 6-month review wasn't followed up with, why they didn't have the 7 meetings with the perpetrator that they had budgeted for. There's been no answers whatsoever. All they said is, oh, you know, we released the guy too early. That's the end of it. But no, that's not the end of it, because my dad isn't here today, so I don't accept that, and I will be finding out why those mistakes were made and how we can stop them happening again.
Since 2021, you've engaged with so many politicians, ministers, prime ministers, about your family's case, about Sir David's memory, and making sure that things really are learnt from. This isn't just another exercise in sort of checking and not actually leading to accountability. How have you found dealing with the Labour government and Shabana Mahmood in particular? Because having read the letter that she sent to you yesterday, it is moving. It's clear, I think, in the language she uses, that she recognises your family's pain and your concerns. How have you found it working with her in particular, having met with her more recently this year as well?
She was very much willing to listen to what we had to say. I found her letter very moving, and I was just so, I don't even know why I have to say this, but I was so appreciative that she could recognise the hurt and the pain that my family is still in, because it's very easy just to see people as news stories, not real humans. But I'm just a grieving daughter here, and my family is totally broken by what happened. So she did recognise that. She did work at pace to get a new reviewer, and she said that she is willing to listen to us. So I really appreciate that, even though I shouldn't have to, because this shouldn't have happened in the first place. But it's given me a small amount of faith that we can get to the bottom of these answers. And I think they know that they're dealing with somebody that isn't just going to accept plasters put over things. I'm going to get to the bottom of things. And if I have to make this my life's work, then I absolutely will.
Katie Amess, daughter of Sir David, thank you very much for joining us on GB News this afternoon. As it's been announced that Sir Robert Buckland will lead that review into Sir David Amess's murder. Right, there's still lots more to come on between now and 6 o'clock, because an arson attack on a Jewish-owned ambulance station has sparked copycat fears. We'll have the latest analysis on that. But first, let's get your traffic and travel update.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M80 southbound, the junction 1 off slip is shut due to an ongoing police incident. Meanwhile, on the M11 southbound, the exit slip at junction 8 has a broken down vehicle blocking one of the two lanes. On the M48 eastbound, motorists should expect delays between junction 2 at Newhouse and junction 1 at Ost. In Wiltshire, traffic on the A36 southbound is slow between the A30 and the A338, with around 10 minutes added to journey times. On the trains, Avanti West Coast and ScotRail are reporting major disruptions at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. The top stories tonight at 5:30. Donald Trump says Tehran wants to settle the war, claiming there's a very good chance of a deal, but Iran is pushing back hard. Tehran calls the claims fake news, vowing to fight until complete victory as missile strikes continue on both sides.
But we'll see what happens. I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
That comes as yet more explosions have occurred overnight in Tel Aviv and Tehran as the conflict enters its 25th day. Iran launched fresh missile attacks, while Israel says it hit 50 targets in Tehran. Here, the Chancellor has warned the economic fallout of the war could be significant. Rachel Reeves says contingency plans are underway to support households with new powers to crack down on companies exploiting rising energy prices. Transgender girls have been given until September to leave girl guiding. The organisation says it's aligning with last year's Supreme Court ruling, but campaigners say the move is heartbreaking. And the King has become patron of a charity protecting British Jews from extremism. It comes after 4 Jewish ambulances were set on fire in Golders Green. Police are probing possible Iran-linked involvement. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you from the newsroom at 6.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We do have a band of heavy rain moving southeast, accompanied by strong winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but showers follow along with bright spells, albeit with a cold wind coming from the north-northwest. That's because we've got one area of low pressure clearing, sending its weather front south with this cold air tucking in behind. Now, over the next few hours, the heavy rain will affect western and then southern parts of the UK, clearing late evening and followed swiftly by frequent showers or even longer spells of rain in places. But with the cold air arriving at the same time, It's going to be a chilly start to Wednesday, with these showers falling as sleet and snow, especially over higher parts of Scotland. Sleet and hail mixed in with the rain showers elsewhere across the United Kingdom. And there will be frequent showers from the word go, as you can see, especially for central and southern parts of England into East Wales. Some brighter spells in between the showers, but we'll all notice the cold wind during the morning, a stark contrast compared with recent days. Now, across Scotland, some of the snow will be building up over higher parts, especially above 200 or 300 metres. At lower levels, it's a right mixture of rain, sleet, hail and snow. And by the afternoon, things warm up a little, so any snow confined to the hills and mountains of Scotland, as well as the Pennines Peak District, Welsh Mountains. At lower levels, we'll continue to see rain and hail showers, but interspersed by sunny spells. However, despite the blue skies in places, we'll continue to feel the cold wind, and feels like temperatures will be 1 to 4 Celsius widely. Now, into the evening, showers become fewer and clear spells become more widespread. As a result, it's a frosty start to Thursday before it turns cloudier later on, with another spell of rain arriving from the west.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
Well, to be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m, only on GB News.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, sitting in for Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, an arson attack on Jewish-owned ambulances has sparked copycat fears amid warnings that Iranian sleeper cells have infiltrated Britain. Well, MI5 are now probing links to an Iranian group after 4 vehicles were torched in gold as green. And now there are warnings that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is fueling the illegal trade in nicotine products and people smuggling. Well, let's speak now to the CEO of Crime Stoppers International, Hayley Van Loon. Hayley, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon on GB News. What can you tell me, first and foremost, about sleeper cells in Europe potentially being activated by Tehran?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This isn't a new concept. We've been seeing IRGC-linked cells around the world, particularly if we look to examples like Australia, where they've used organised crime gangs in Melbourne to undertake terror attacks against synagogues and restaurants and other Israeli sites in Melbourne. And it's not a new concept, and we're certainly seeing it emerge more kind of vehemently now that the conflict is escalating.
And there are these fresh reports that IRGC and its linked proxies, such as Hezbollah, are involved in illegal nicotine trades, that the fake cigarettes people might buy out and about in Britain or in Europe, if they do that, they could be contributing to terrorism. What more can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. And this is a message we've been trying to educate the community on for quite some time, that purchasing counterfeit goods, whether it be illicit tobacco or other things, you may be directly funding terrorist organisations and attacks on our nations. So it means the illicit tobacco trade is no longer just a taxation issue, it is a national security issue.
And how have you established that? What have you found about links between, say, Hezbollah or the IRGC and these illegal trades? I'm just keen to get more detail behind that claim.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the example of Australia, it's the best case study where we saw a man with the last name Hamad that was controlling the illicit tobacco trade in Melbourne. Now, they were able to determine financial links between the IRGC and that particular illicit tobacco network, and firebombings, like I mentioned earlier, of a mosque in Melbourne and an Israeli restaurant as well. And that led to Australia actually expelling the Iranian ambassador. That's how strong the links were, and they were declared by not only our Prime Minister, but the head of our Domestic Intelligence Service and the head of the Australian Federal Police. What we do know is that there's other links that we've seen across Europe, such as the Foxtrot network, etc., with Majid, and that has seen links directly to the IRGC as well, and that they were dealing in illicit tobacco and other narcotics and things like that.
The Foxtrot network, is that a IRGC organisation in Europe? Tell me more about that, please.
That's an organised crime cell that was operating in Europe, particularly in Sweden, and they were able to determine links directly between them and Tehran.
And what are the other organised criminal gang links that you have observed linking with Iran-backed terrorism? Of course, these groups, they need to find money, and crime, unfortunately, in some places pays very well, particularly in the drugs trade as well, I imagine. Have you seen overlaps there at the same time?
Absolutely. It's what we call the illegal empire at Crime Stoppers International, and crime convergence is certainly an ongoing issue across the different verticals of crime. Now, we see any kind of organised crime gangs, whether it be motorcycle links or whatever it might be, they'll sell their kind of infrastructure to the highest bidder. And if that's state actors such as Iran or the IRGC proxies, then they will certainly do that. They will sell their capability to the highest bidder and do the work for them, rather than countries like Iran building their own networks. Why not use an established one that's already working and has been working for some time?
Hayley Van Loon, thank you very much. You're the CEO of Crime Stoppers International, with quite an alarming update there on the links between organised criminal gangs and Hezbollah and the IRGC. Well, coming up here on GB News, we'll be speaking to Brian Rowe. He's dreamt of being a binman since he was just 2 years old, but he's been rejected twice from the job, despite completing a 9-month internship where, get what, they didn't pay him a single pound for those full 9 months. Quite something. He'll be joining us very shortly, but first, let's get the European forecasts.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
A mixed picture weather-wise across southern Europe through tomorrow. We do have some showery rain affecting Greece. None of that looks especially heavy, and it is clearing away. Meanwhile, towards Italy, whilst tomorrow's looking largely dry, Storm Deborah is going to arrive overnight and into Thursday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, even some significant mountain snow. Meanwhile, towards the Canaries and Madeira, well, it's been very unsettled recently. A shift in the wind direction does mean parts towards the southwest will be a bit more sheltered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Pork pies. They're widely regarded as a classic British snack dating back to the 18th century.
But Tesco's recent survey found that a third of youngsters have never tried the savoury treat.
Outrageous. So the retailer have now released a limited edition pork pie-inspired sandwich. Here it is here. We've got one procured to try it out. But the idea of this is to give the youngsters of today all the chance to enjoy this nostalgic British classic, even if it's not a real pork pie, but a sandwich that has been flavoured as such.
That's a load of processed meat flattened together like a slice of it. There's a slither in there with a bit of cheese. We're joined now by the owners of Fuller's Butchers and Farm Shop, Steve Fuller and Lily Fuller. Welcome.
Basically, we make our own pork pies. We sell about 400 a week, and yeah, I mean, to me, I'd say they're becoming more popular. Actually, I mean, they're a great snack. You can take them on a picnic. You've got the nice crispy pastry and the nice juicy pork meat inside. So
now I can see you're holding up those pork pies. We have got pork pies flavoured sandwiches here. I wonder if it's time to do a bit of a taste test. Perhaps you could bite into your pork pie there in your farm shop. We'll have a bite of this Tesco sandwich and see how it all feels. It's not going to be great for the listeners on the radio, but here we go. I think they've captured the essence of one. This is an excellent I can't speak with my mouth full of sandwich.
You ate too much, that was where you went wrong.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Charlie Peters, in for Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, a disabled man who dreams of becoming a bintman has been left heartbroken after being rejected twice, despite completing a 9-month internship for free. Well, joining me now is Brian and his mother, Claire Rowe. Brian and Claire, thank you so much for joining me on GB News this afternoon. Brian, your story of dedication is so strong that you completed these internships, but still no job offer. What's the story behind this?
Good evening. It's lovely to be here with you. So Brian's always wanted to be a bin man since he was really small, and we got him a 2-week work experience placement at the local authority, which he thoroughly enjoyed, and he did various little bits, going out with supervisors. He thoroughly enjoyed his time there for 2 weeks, and it reinforced that he really wanted to be a bin man. So once that work experience place was over, I contacted the local authority again and asked if they would be happy to put him on a supported internship with them. That obviously was approved, and it was all agreed between the local authority and the council, and the college. So Brian started his placement at the local authority, the waste operations, 2 days a week, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And somewhere along the line, he managed to increase from 2 days to 3 days. He started the same time as everyone else, at 6:30 in the morning. He finished at 15:36 in the afternoon, like everybody else. And he went out with the bin crews on the refuse trucks, on a variety of things, trade waste.
Waste.
Yeah.
All the rest of them, general waste, recycling, the lot.
And thoroughly enjoyed it.
Brian, look, there are so many young people in the country who aren't working right now. A lot of them sort of, claiming benefits for that. But you, Brian, I think you are an inspirational story because, despite ADHD, and I think also, Claire, I think you've also said that we can share that he has, a form of muscular dystrophy as well. But still, you're going out and trying to fight to get work, trying to fight to be able to be a binman in Southampton. I think your story will be seen as an inspiration to so many, even if you're not quite being allowed to get the gig at the moment.
Yeah. You feel quite disappointed, don't you?
Yeah, I feel like I should have been in a job because I did 9 months with them and then it was quite fun and I loved it doing it with them because they were all a joy to work with, all the guys. I still know some of them now, so
Yeah, Brian, what did they say when your time with them ended? Were they very supportive of your time with them across those 9 months and the other bits of work you've done as well? How supportive were all those colleagues?
They were all like, go for an interview. We really want you back. And if you come back, we'll take you on. And they were really nice. They said, if you don't get a job, we hope for you in the for the best in the future. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, great. And Brian, what is it about this job that you've wanted to do since you were 2? Why is it that this has been the dream for you?
Because I've always wanted to do the bin man, and I've just loved doing it. And it's just, I've always wanted to do what I've always wanted to do with.
Totally. And Claire, Claire, you must be so proud of your son. And I think, I was saying that his story is inspirational. I can already see plenty of messages flying in on gbnews.com/yours say, plenty of people adding to that perspective as well. You must have an enormous sense of pride knowing that Brian is going out fighting for work when so many in much better circumstances are not doing that.
Yeah, we have a very strong family ethos from both my family and my husband's family. We've always worked. We've always had the ethos that you need to go out to work, get up in the morning. It gives you so much pride, gives you something to get up for. And not only that, for disabled people, it proves to them that they can do things.
Yes.
Regardless of disability, you can do things. There shouldn't be anything that holds you back. You should be able to do what you want to do. I'm not asking for him to be a brain surgeon. It's not
I'm so sorry, Claire and Brian, I've got to interrupt. We've got to wrap it up there. We're out of time. But thank you so much for coming on this afternoon. Well, a spokesperson for the council said they're unable to comment on individual applications, but recruitment decisions are reviewed to ensure that they are fair. Jubes coming up in just a moment. Michelle, what's coming up on your menu?
I've just got to say, what an inspirational duo they are. I send them all my love, but look, come on, 6 o'clock.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold, even if it's not a widespread frost because of the air being stirred up by the wind. It will be a chilly start to Wednesday, cold enough so that these showers into Scotland will be falling as sleet and snow in places, especially above 100 or 200 metres, settling over the hills of northern Scotland. At lower levels, certainly as we go through the day and things warm up slightly, we'll see mostly rain and hail coming through, but continued snow over the higher parts of Scotland and higher parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales as well. Showers pushing into the Midlands, Southern England as well first thing. Some reasonable sunny spells, however. Bright skies for many compared with Tuesday's grey. And we'll see some sunny spells extend across most parts of the UK in between these frequent showers. The showers will be most frequent across western Scotland, northwest England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. And they'll be accompanied by this cold and gusty wind. So although the thermometer will read 8 to 9 Celsius in many places, it'll feel more like 3 or 4 degrees in that northerly wind. Thursday starts off with lighter winds, but with more extensive clear spells and a frost fairly widely. Then as we go into the afternoon, things start to turn cloudy from the northwest with some outbreaks of mostly light rain arriving. Friday, further spells of rain followed by showers, some bright spells into the weekend.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Road users should take care on the A9 Dornoch Bridge due to high winds. On the M48 eastbound, expect delays between Junction 2 at Newhouse and Junction 1 at Aust. Northamptonshire's M1 northbound exit slip at Junction 36 has a broken down vehicle blocking a lane. The M56 eastbound has congestion between Junction 3 and Junction 1. The M11 southbound exit slip at Junction 8 has a lane closed for a stranded vehicle. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and ScotRail report major disruption at Glasgow Central and issues between Wolverhampton and Birmingham New Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away with this very latest Benivan 4-berth campervan. This campervan is fully equipped with its own kitchen, bathroom, dinette and plenty of storage. We'll also get your summer sorted with a further £25,000 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. For another chance to win a campervan and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition, from 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion. My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. Coming up tonight. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been today outlining, or not, perhaps, the support that might be given in the event of rising costs. Let's take a look at that. Also, boys have been told that they can no longer be part of Girl Guides. Good. I mean, the clue is in the name, is it not? But notwithstanding that, some people are absolutely furious. We need to discuss that. And do you remember Shabana Mahmood? She announced a ban on student visas for people from certain countries. Well, get this. Now, students from Sudan, Afghanistan and more are taking the government to court. What do you make to that? They reckon it's discrimination. And listen to this.
The signs of age are very apparent. When you find you've walked into a room and you can't remember why you went in there. And it's the toilet.
The man, the comedy legend Bob Monkhouse. Well, we all remember him, of course, and his famous one-liners. Well, get this. A BBC show, The Repair Shop, received an original of one of his joke books to restore. But get this, ladies and gents, they did that, but then refused to air the edition of the show after a member of the production team found it offensive. What do you think to that? All of that and more keeping me company. My panel tonight, the Conservative peer and former MEP Baroness Jacqueline Foster. Alongside her, I've got former Labour advisor Matthew Lars. But before we get stuck in, let's cross and get your 6 o'clock news headlines with Sam Francis.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. British forces have shot down 14 kamikaze drones in just a single night, making it the highest number intercepted so far in the current escalation. The RAF says the drones were destroyed over Iraq as Typhoon and F-35 jets continue defensive missions across the region, including Cyprus, Jordan and in Qatar. Additional UK air defence systems have now been deployed to Cyprus, with force protection at its highest level as tensions rise. Well, it comes as Donald Trump claims Iran wants to settle the war, but Tehran is dismissing that as fake news and is vowing to fight on. Well, we're also getting reports tonight from the Wall Street Journal and the Reuters news agency suggesting that the United States is preparing to send 3,000 troops to the Middle East. That, according to those reports, the deployment comes amid rising tensions in the region, though it's not yet clear where they will be sent. So we'll bring you any further details as we get it. Here, meanwhile, the government is warning the economic impact of that conflict could be significant, with fresh plans to shield households from rising costs. Rachel Reeves says oil and gas prices remain high and inflation could reach up to 3.5% in the coming months. She's announced stronger powers for regulators to crack down on companies accused of profiteering during the crisis. The Chancellor also confirmed moves to boost energy security, including investment in renewables, nuclear expansion and backing domestic oil and gas.
And I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
Also tonight, Russia has launched a rare daytime assault on Ukraine, with a record 948 drones in just 24 hours across the country. In Lviv, just 40 miles from the Polish border, at least 13 people have been injured after strikes hit the city centre, including a residential building. Ukrainian officials say the attack targeted a crowded city centre in broad daylight and are calling for tougher sanctions against Moscow. Well, in response tonight, Poland has scrambled fighter jets, placing air defence systems on maximum alert as Russian drones operated close to NATO airspace. A Moroccan asylum seeker serving life for murder has been charged with attempting to kill prison officers. Ahmed Ali Alid, convicted of murdering a pensioner in Hartlepool, is accused of attempted murder, assault and possessing an offensive weapon following incidents at 2 prisons. The 47-year-old, jailed for killing 70-year-old Terence Carney, is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court tomorrow. Transgender girls have been given until September to leave Girl Guiding. The organisation says membership will now be restricted to girls and young women following last year's Supreme Court ruling, defining sex as biological sex in equalities law. Affected members will have until the 6th of September to leave or to move to other roles. Girl Guiding says it remains committed to supporting marginalised communities, but campaigners have called the decision heartbreaking. And the government is under pressure over claims it's not doing enough to protect Britain from state-sponsored threats. It follows a suspected anti-Semitic arson attack in northwest London, now being led by counter-terror police. 3 suspects are believed to be involved, with officers examining possible links to a wider Iranian network. Extra armed police have been deployed across the capital, to protect the Jewish community as 4 replacement ambulances arrived to replace those that were destroyed. Well, tonight, Nigel Farage has said that he thinks the government is failing to act.
Prime Minister should prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC. There is a terror cell in North London. We saw it in action just yesterday, and yet the Prime Minister does nothing. He says he feels for the Jewish community. We want some action. And the fact these people are free to roam our streets, I'm very worried about it.
That is the news on GB News. I'll be back with you at 7 o'clock. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that. Hello, good evening to each and every single one of you. My name's Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Conservative peer and former MEP Baroness Jacqueline Foster. Alongside her, I've not seen him for a while, former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Good evening to both of you. Very welcome tonight. You won't be saying that when I pass my sniffles on to you from 7 o'clock. From 7 o'clock, you'll be there with your tissues going, why did I agree to sit next to that Dewberry woman for an hour? Anyway, look, you're all very welcome tonight, of course. I want you to join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me. I am old-fashioned like that, me. gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet and you can X me. I've got some slightly different but interesting things we need to discuss tonight. Bob Monkhouse, please get in touch and tell me what you think to him. I think he was absolutely hilarious. But some, of course, you guessed it, think that he's offensive. His jokes were offensive and sexist. We need to talk about that. The repair shop comes into it. We'll do that before the end of the programme. And I also want to talk about that story in the headlines there, the fact that boys are now no longer allowed to go to girl guides. One would think that's just basic common sense. The clue is indeed in the title. But alas, in the clown world that we now live in, no, that is not always the case. Anyway, look, let's start off with very important matters. How we are all going to manage to navigate our way through the cost of living challenges, crisis, whatever words you want to apply to that. Well, Rachel Reeves, of course, on her feet in the Commons today. Let's take a listen.
I can confirm to the House that contingency planning is taking place for every eventuality, so that we can keep costs down for everyone and provide support for those who need it most, acting within our ironclad fiscal rules to keep inflation and interest rates as low as possible. Mr. Speaker, this is not a war that we started, nor is it a war that we joined, unlike the advice of the parties opposite.
Well, look, there's been lots of speculation about who would get this support. And now, of course, it's all becoming familiar. Targeted approach would be more appropriate because the top third of families under the previous approach got more than a third of the benefits, she's saying. She's saying that households in the top income bracket, get this, received an average of £1,350 of bill support in 2022, which she says was equivalent to 11% of that spend. Jacqueline, what do you think to all this?
Well, I think her approach actually is absolutely hysterical. If we just look back to the COVID period, I mean, we were in lockdown for 2 years. We then ended up, obviously, with the Ukraine war. And, I mean, that was sort of bounced on everybody. And the government at the time made the right decision, because once you start trying to determine who exactly should get some help, that takes a great deal of time. So, of course, the government didn't want to spend. We didn't want to spend £70-odd billion trying to do this. But to sort of use it as a sort of excuse at this stage is quite appalling. And I do take issue also with her comment. You know, this is not a war that we started, nor a war that we joined. It's a war that will have an impact. Of course it will have an impact. But what she fails to say is we are all involved in this. We have a regime in Iran, which has actually caused havoc and mayhem for the last 50 years. And this is about national security. And while we will feel the impact of this, to sort of use it with this stick to keep kicking anybody that actually supports the fact that we need to make sure we support armed forces. They attacked RAF Akrotiri. This regime were also responsible for attacking North London, the ambulances, the other night. We know that this was an offshoot of that.
No, that hasn't been confirmed yet, has it?
But, well, apparently it hasn't. But we know that they are a threat to our national security. So, yes, unfortunately, there is a price to pay. But notwithstanding that, fortunately, we're moving into the summer. There are certain things that she can do in any event. They can freeze certain taxes. I mean, we pay twice as much in energy bills than the rest of Europe. 4 times, I think, 3 or 4 times more than the US. And most of the money that we spend on bills and our fuel is actually towards the net zero agenda, and they could do things now. But no, she's gone into this sort of hysterical override and now talking about what we did when, you know, the Ukraine war broke out. So, yeah, she needs to stop talking and let's have some action.
Well, I think that's exactly what she's going to do, Jackie, because she's getting ready if the high prices on the world markets continue, and therefore when the cap is reviewed, particularly for the winter period, if the costs are going to go sky high, she's getting ready to do a targeted package. I think she's right to say that the country can't afford to do a blank cheque. Whether that was right or wrong to do that when bills skyrocketed after Ukraine is a matter for historic debate. What's more important, as you say about taking the costs, the sort of green levies on the energy bills, the government's just taken a whole load of those off, which is why when the cap came in a week ago, 150 quid went off of those costs off everybody's
Hang on,
bills.
did they take them off or did they redirect them onto general taxation?
They redirected some of them onto general taxation off people's individual bills.
Yeah, so but let's be sensible. When we say, because this is what the Labour Party are doing a lot now, oh, guys, yeah, we've taken all these green levies off you. No, we're just taking them off you in a different way. It's not the same thing.
Well, it's fair that they come out of taxation and they come out of bills, because obviously everybody pays their bills, including people who don't pay taxes, who might be senior citizens on a lower income, etc. So I think it's fairer to do it like that. And there is a way of doing it. There's a kind of... what I suspect they'll do is a think tank close to the Labour Party called the Resolution Foundation, which one of her ministers who sat next to her today used to run, has suggested that you could do a package that would cost about 3.4 billion a year and would be able to take about a 20% cut for everybody, any household that was on 38,000 or less. I think that's better than writing a blank cheque. But let's see. I mean, she is right. This is a war that we that we are not taking part in. We did not start.
Of course, we're taking part in it.
Of course, we want to see Iran in a better place. But I don't think that there's any sign that this war is going to end up with Iran in a better place. And we're all paying the price for President Trump. And you know, originally Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage just said yes sir, no sir to Donald Trump.
Well, no, they didn't. So don't be flippant about that.
I'm not.
And notwithstanding that, we have oil fields and gas fields in the North Sea. There's nothing to stop it taking the decision. I mean, it's this government that actually decided not to allow new licences. But even the fields that are actually operating, they can up their production. I mean, it's not as though we're not producing energy ourselves. So you know, there are things that they could do. But I mean, Miliband won't allow that. He won't allow that, apparently, and yet there we have fuel under our feet, basically, but they won't allow us to go into further production on that.
Well, look, I think that the government should allow new licences, as do quite a lot of people in the Labour Party, including, actually, both of the leading Labour-supporting trade unions who have workers in that sector, and actually Jürgen Meyer, who's the chairman of UK Energy, the government's... GB Energy, rather, the government's great, proud... Ed Miliband's proud achievement, hinted today that he thinks that should be a good idea too. So I say to my old boss Ed Miliband, drill baby drill, but it isn't going to sort out anybody's energy bills and set by.
Yeah, but then will he drill baby drill? Because the accusation towards him is that he's absolutely blinded by ideology. So when you've got all these people now across the political spectrum, yesterday was covering a fact that one Labour backbench MP, he was saying, get on with it and all the rest of it. So voices now from everywhere are saying this is just, I would say it's actually quite neglectful, actually, for us, negligence to us not to be maximising whatever it is, may or may not be, in that North Sea. But Is he blinded by ideology? Will he take these concerns on board?
Well, I think he has to show that he isn't. I mean, that's a big challenge for Ed, and I think the pressure is mounting within the Labour Party.
Do you think he's
I think what he can certainly do is accelerate the government's policy of allowing new extensions to existing fields. There's a big decision coming up because the court overruled a permission in a gas field called Rosebank. The government needs to hurry up and make its decision on that, and I think Ed needs to get on and do that. I think the pressure within the party for that, for allowing extensions to existing fields, which is actually the government's policy.
Ed Miliband doesn't listen to anybody. If you'd have watched his performance at the last Select Committee over energy prices and what the government's position was, it was quite appalling, in fact, the way he was actually responding to the MPs who were posing very genuine questions about how we could actually make sure that we had an energy policy that actually wasn't actually crippling the British public.
Well, I mean, 98% of our gas comes either from the UK or from Norway. The problem is that the cost is on global markets, and so obviously the Norwegians can sell it elsewhere, so the cost goes up. We could sell it elsewhere, in theory, so the cost goes up for everybody. But we should do more in the North Sea, and I think it's a pressure on it. And I hope that people like the General Secretary of Unite, Sharon Graham, who's been saying, get on with it, and the GMB union prevail.
She's been saying a bit more than get on with it. She's been obviously they're looking at not looking at. They are going to withdraw a big proportion of their funding from the Labour Party. They're literally questioning what is the purpose of the Labour Party. They was calling it industrial suicide or whatever the terminology that they were using. So, yeah, a bit more strident than just get on with it. Nigel Farage, he's been speaking out on this as well. Let's take a listen.
If the government choose to give more money, and it's not even taxpayers' money, it's borrowed money, to subsidise bills, we frankly can't afford it. And we're not dealing with the problem. The problem is we've been paying $150 to $160 a barrel to bring oil in from the Middle East when we could be producing our own. Gas is even more stark. When the government say there's a benchmark price, yes, there's a benchmark price, but when you ship stuff halfway around the world, it's more expensive. We should be producing our own energy, and all of us, individuals, households, and businesses would have far cheaper bills. Literally madness.
What do you think to this whole debate, and who do you think should be getting that support, if anyone at all? Many of you might be working, etc., and say, hang on a minute, Michelle, why are we always left out of the support conversations? Why is it when we strive, when we sacrifice, when we try and work hard, that we don't get the same support as someone, a household that, for example, might be on benefits? I don't know, make of all of that what you will, but do get in touch and tell me what your thoughts are. So much that we need to discuss. Bob Monkhouse, what do you think to him? Do you think he is offensive, sexist, or actually quite funny? Great story coming up about him. I also need to talk about a legal challenge now to Shabana Mahmood, one of her proposals, but also up next I need to talk to you about the fact that boys will now no longer be allowed to be part of Girl Guides. Believe it or not, some people are absolutely outraged by this. I'll see you in a sec.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Jubes & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me, I've got Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Matthew Larza. I do want you to get in touch and tell me who, if anyone, some of you might think nobody should get support. Alistair says, Michelle Rachel Reeves feels like a student that's been given her first credit card. The only problem is she's spending our money. Peter says, Michelle, the support will do nothing for pensioners who are not on benefits and use heating oil. I think they announced, didn't they, some supports for heating oil. Was it 53 million? Am I getting old and my memory's gone? But I know, Peter, you might want to look at that if you're on heating oil, because I know they did do something about that the other day. Look, so much we need to talk about on the programme tonight. This is a subject that I am very passionate about. You will be familiar with this. The whole notion about single-sex spaces for women and girls. Now, everyone would have thought that when the Supreme Court made this ruling, identifying very clearly that the Equality Act, for all intents purposes, a single-sex space means biological sex. But no, still we have all of these scenarios, ladies and gents, where that is still not the case. Well, the organisation now, Girl Guiding, I know many of you have children and grandchildren, etc., in this organisation. Well, they've upset a lot of people now, because they've said that any boys that are a member of the Girl Guides must now leave the organisation by September the 6th. The reason that this has upset so many people is because the Girl Guides did permit, actually, these boys, so-called trans girls, to be a part of this Girl Guide. And now people are very upset, saying that this is the wrong move from them and they don't want them to do this. What do you think?
Well, apparently it's the campaign group, I think, Trans Solidarity Alliance, who are complaining about this. But if we look back, if we take a step back...
There's lots of people
I have no idea. Well, they're one of the key groups, I think. But if we look back, how they allowed it in the first place is absolutely beyond me. Notwithstanding, it's as though these children, you know, just sort of meet once a week or once a month or whatever. They go on trips, you know, they go camping, they do all sorts of things like that. And despite many parents actually raising objections, because it did mean that boys and girls, pubescent boys and girls, were actually going to be sharing accommodation. It was like it fell on deaf ears, basically. So they have sort of ducked and dived around the Supreme Court ruling, I think, like so many others. But I think the determination that this should now happen by those in government and others is actually quite correct.
Where are you, Matt Lars, on this?
So I think that Girl Guiding had no choice to comply. They had to comply with the Supreme Court ruling. I think it, you know, probably is the right thing to do. I think it's hard that the people who are already in and haven't been causing any problems are going to be affected and kicked out by this. So I think it might have been that they could have just said, you know, we will anybody who's joining, we will apply the new rules to, because I mean I think it's probably a very small number of young people who are in membership who identify as trans that I think that they will that they will be impacted. And apparently most of the volunteers, because quite a lot apparently of the supervisory roles in girl guiding are open to men and women, so they'll be able to hopefully move into those roles and carry on helping our young people, learn new skills and do all the things they do in girl guides.
You see, I always find it fascinating when men are telling us women that actually, like what you just said then, in this case, the boys that are already in this girls' club, let's just let them stay there. The group that you just mentioned, Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance, they've said now that this change shows, quote, inclusive organisations being bullied into excluding people against their will. But this is the thing. When you have a single-sex space, changing room, toilet, group, whatever it is, it's not supposed to be an inclusive venue. It's supposed to be an exclusive venue, exclusively for, in this case, women and girls, and excluding males. Please help me fathom why so many people find that difficult to understand.
Well, I mean, I don't think they've been bullied into it. I think that the trans campaign is wrong on that, because clearly what they're doing is complying with the Supreme Court ruling, which has broad agreement amongst people to do just what you've said. I mean, as I say, I think it must be a handful of people that it applies to currently, and I think that it might have been better just to see if they could,
But why? Why should it? Why? I mean, I don't have a little girl, but I do have nieces, etc. If you've got a little girl in literally the clue is in the word, girl guides, why should you have to suck up there being boys there? Why?
Well, I mean, they don't regard themselves as boys. They regard themselves as trans. And we don't know what the self-ID in this country. We don't have self-ID in this country, and obviously, by the nature of it, they're too young to have been through the legal reassignment process. So, I think. I'm happy for girl guides to make the decision themselves to comply with the Supreme Court ruling. Again, as I say, I think for the handful of young people who are already involved, who clearly are not causing problems, because we know they're not causing problems.
That's not the point. No, that's not the point. The thing is, actually, these children shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place. So the decisions, in my view, before the Supreme Court ruling, I think the Girl Guide Association was completely wrong. And it's not just the Girl Guide Association. There were other organisations too that allowed this whole trans issue really to get out of control. And also, what's interesting, it's predominantly a male issue, a biological male issue into female spaces. We rarely hear of anything like this the other way round, where girls, of course, female, biological girls, have caused some sort of problem.
Well, no, because hang on, because there'll be some men watching this and say, hold on a minute, Michelle. Because there was loads of campaigning to try and get girls into the Scouts, which was traditionally a male-only activity club.
No, but my point is that organisations that then refuted these decisions were absolutely correct in the first place. If organisations had stuck to the job and the responsibilities that they had in the first place, which were quite clear, they're quite clear, then you wouldn't end up in these sorts of situations, because, yes, of course the kids will be upset. But at the end of the day, those children shouldn't have been in the Girl Guides in any event. So, it is what it is.
It seems the Scouts do still...
I think the Scouts could be mixed.
Scouts open all and actively welcomes transgender young people. So yeah, but I was neither. I wasn't a Scout, and I certainly wasn't.
Well, I was a Girl Guide and a Brownie, and they were all girls that were in the Brownies and the Girl Guides. All my friends at school were in the Boys and the Cadets and all of those, the Boys Brigade and the Scouts, and they were all boys. Some organisations do have mixtures now. They do have different people that come in and different,
But you can't. I mean, I would argue.
But I think this is straightforward.
Women can't have it both ways. If you want a single-sex girls and women's group, then you've also got to respect single-sex boys groups. I don't agree with all of this. There was that private members club not that long ago that was male only, and then you had a load of random women trying to shuffle themselves into there, trying to force this male-only club to be inclusive towards women. So my position is on, it's straight down the line. When you've got a single-sex space, sex as defined by the Supreme Court, the fact that you need a Supreme Court to define this in the first place is a bit laughable if you ask me, but anyway, we are where we are. But when you believe in single-sex spaces, the law must be applied, and that must be applied equally, whether that's a guy's club, a boys' club, a girls' club, or a women's club. I noticed the other day there was a boxing and fitness. Did you see this before I move on? There was a boxing and fitness programme in Bristol, the King's Trust, I think it was, and it was for disadvantaged females, but they said, basically, female is anyone that identifies or perceives themselves as a female, so you could have had potentially men going into a boxing ring with a woman or a young girl on the basis that they merely identify as a female. When people complained about this, rather than going, oh yeah, fair enough, single sex, biological female, they cancelled the whole thing.
Yeah, but we had the same thing in the Olympics. And the Olympic Committee made a shocking mistake where we had basically two biological men who actually ended up fighting with women and absolutely pummeled them, frankly.
Final thought to you on this one, Matt.
Yeah, look, I think that single-sex spaces need to be protected. The Supreme Court's been clear on that. Obviously, you're going to have issues while the ruling is implemented by organisations. You're going to have issues like we have at the moment, which have unfortunate consequences. But I think in the end, we'll be in the right place.
Yeah, and by the way, if anyone's watching this and they're not happy with this, create a new group then. Create a gender-neutral, mixed-sex group, an activity group, and involve absolutely everybody. Stop trying to make women and girls include men more often than not against our wishes. Thank you very much. Anyway, look, so much that we need to discuss. Bob Monkhouse, you won't believe what's happened there. And also, we need to talk about Shabana Mahmood. She was banning student visas from a variety of countries. Well, you won't believe this. Now, some students from those countries are taking legal action against the government, saying that this is discrimination. I'll see you in a minute.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A mixed picture weather-wise across southern Europe through tomorrow. We do have some showery rain affecting Greece. None of that looks especially heavy, and it is clearing away. Meanwhile, towards Italy, whilst tomorrow's looking largely dry, Storm Deborah is going to arrive overnight and into Thursday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, even some significant mountain snow. Meanwhile, towards the Canaries and Madeira, well, it's been very unsettled recently. A shift in the wind direction does mean parts towards the southwest will be a bit more sheltered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold, even if it's not a widespread frost because of the air being stirred up by the wind. It will be a chilly start to Wednesday, cold enough so that these showers into Scotland will be falling as sleet and snow in places, especially above 100 or 200 metres, settling over the hills of northern Scotland. At lower levels, certainly as we go through the day and things warm up slightly, we'll see mostly rain and hail coming through, but continued snow over the higher parts of Scotland and higher parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales as well. Showers pushing into the Midlands, Southern England as well first thing. Some reasonable sunny spells, however, bright skies for many compared with Tuesday's grey. And we'll see some sunny spells extend across most parts of the UK in between these frequent showers. The showers will be most frequent across western Scotland, northwest England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. They'll be accompanied by this cold and gusty wind. So although the thermometer will read 8 to 9 Celsius in many places, it'll feel more like 3 or 4 degrees in that northerly wind. Thursday starts off with lighter winds, but with more extensive clear spells and a frost fairly widely. Then as we go into the afternoon, things start to turn cloudy from the northwest with some outbreaks of mostly light rain arriving. Friday, further spells of rain followed by showers, some bright spells into the weekend.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Take care on the A9 Dornoch Bridge, where high winds are making driving conditions tricky. On the M62 eastbound between Junction 21 and Junction 22 near Rochdale, a road traffic collision has shut 2 of 4 lanes with delays of around an hour. In Norfolk, the A47 westbound between the A1074 and the A1075 has lane closures due to a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast reports major disruption at Glasgow Central, plus disruption between Wolverhampton and Birmingham New Street, while ScotRail also has major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Jubes & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Jacqueline Foster and Matthew Larzo. Well, I can tell you now, Donald Trump is on his feet in the White House, the latest on Iran. Let's listen.
Another question, you haven't been here in a while.
Well, on Iran, can you give us any more sense of who exactly in Iran it is, either Witkoff and Kushner and others are speaking with?
Yeah, we had, I hate to say this in front of these young people, they're not children. I spoke to most of them. They sound like adults to me, even though they are sort of children, right? They'll always be your children. But I hate to say it, but we killed all their leadership. And then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. And now we have a new group, and we can easily do that. But let's see how they turn out. We have really regime change. You know, this is a change in the regime. Because the leaders are all very different than the ones that we started off with that created all those problems. So this was, I think we can say, Jason, this is regime change, right?
What makes you trust them?
I don't trust anybody. I don't trust you. I mean, that's only because I know you. But if I didn't know you, I'd probably have more trust. But I don't trust anyone.
Why bother?
Why do you say that? Why do you say what makes you trust? Do you think I trust them? I don't trust them.
Then why bother talking to them?
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it. So that meant one thing to me: we're dealing with the right people.
Is that nuclear related?
No, it wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. Because, you know, you don't know, because the leadership was killed, all gone. Khomeini, all gone, as the expression goes, the past supreme leader. And then the new supreme leader was racked up, at a minimum racked up pretty good, and everyone else was gone. And then many of the people in the third tier are gone, but we're dealing with a group of people that I think turn out, and the present, the gift they made to us was very significant, and they said they were going to do it, and it happened, and they're the only ones that could have done it. Jennifer?
Was it related to the Strait of Hormuz and the flow of...
Yeah, it was related to the flow and to the strait, yeah. It was.
Are you negotiating on who's going to control the strait from now on?
No, we'll have control of anything we want. Look, if we can end this without more lives being down, without knocking out $10 billion electric plants that are brand new and the apple of their eye, I'd like to be able to do that, you know. But they can't have certain things. I mean, you know the things. I don't have to go over the list, but. Again, it starts with no nuclear weapons, and they've agreed to that. There won't be any nuclear weapons. They're not going to have, and they're not going to have enrichment any of those things. But look, I hate to say that we're in a very good bargaining position, and I hate to say that they're defenseless because, until that last missile is fired, they have little power. But we are in about the best bargaining position. We're way ahead of schedule. And again, they have no Navy and they have no Air Force and they have no missile protection, and most of their missiles are gone. Most of their launches we've killed. We've killed about 82% of their launches. So even if they had a missile, they can't launch it. We've been very effective. We have the greatest military in the world. Nobody even comes close. We have the best military equipment in the world. Go ahead.
On Saudi Arabia, there's been some reporting that you've been talking to the Crown Prince. Have you been focused on normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel at this point?
No, we have a great relationship with Saudi Arabia. What do you hear with Saudi Arabia?
Just hearing that you've been talking and that he has been encouraging you to do certain things related to Iran. Can you share a little bit?
He's a warrior. He does. Yeah, he's a warrior. He's fighting with us, by the way. Saudi Arabia has been excellent, and UAE, excellent. And I will tell you, Qatar, incredible. Qatar took a hit, a pretty bad hit. Qatar's very close. They're essentially, you can walk right over the border. Qatar took a hit. They've been great. They've been very strong. Kuwait, they had a little mishap. They shot down 3 planes with our missiles. They happen to be our planes. But the pilots made it. Can you imagine the pilots making it? The pilots saw what was coming. And they said, those are patriots. We're not going to escape patriots. And they got out of there pretty quick, Pete, right? Pretty amazing that they got out. The 3 pilots lived. They're fine. In fact, they're flying today.
It was the Kuwaitis that accidentally fired the missile?
Yeah, the Kuwaitis made a mistake. They fired. They thought they were firing at the enemy. It was, as the expression goes, friendly fire. But the pilots are great. They're flying today. Pretty amazing when you think of it. Yeah.
President Trump, on a human level, how hopeful are you that this peace deal will work out? Like as a human,
On what?
On a human level, not as the President of the United States. How hopeful are you that this peace deal will work out with Iran?
You're talking about to end it? Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure. I don't like to say this. We've won this. This war has been won. The only one that likes to keep it going is the fake news. I mean, the New York Times, you read the New York Times, it's like we're not winning a war where they have no Navy and they have no Air Force and they have no nothing. And we literally have planes flying over Tehran and other parts of their country. They can't do a thing about it. For instance, if I want to take down that power plant, that very big, powerful power plant, they can't do a thing about it. It's like, take me. That's all they can do. And yet, if you read the New York Times or if you watch ABC fake news or NBC fake news, you'd say it's a close battle. It's not a close battle. They're totally defeated. We killed their Navy in, would you say 3 days, Pete? Gone. In fact, I was a little upset with Pete. I said, why didn't you save the ships? We could have used them, right? He said, it's more fun shooting them down. But the Navy was wiped out in a very rapid order. Pretty impressive for you guys, you champion wrestlers, right? When you hear this stuff. But you don't, if you read the news, you don't hear this. You read like, oh, they're doing wonderfully. They're doing terribly. They're wiped out militarily. They are dead. Yeah.
On Ukraine, is there a new sense of a timeline? Do you want to get something done before the midterms?
Well, we'd like to see President Putin and President Zelensky sit down and make a deal. I think they're getting close, but I've been saying that for a while. I've settled 8 wars. All of them should have been more difficult than this one. This should have been the easiest one. But these are 2 people that truly hate each other. You'll find out that hatred is not good for making deals. These are people that they don't like each other very much. Yeah.
I know you said there's a bunch of people from the administration who are negotiating with Iran. There's been reports that the vice president is leading those negotiations. Is that true?
Well, he's involved in them. JD is involved, and Marco is involved, and Jared Kushner's involved, very smart guy, and Steve Witkoff, smart guy, is involved. And I'm involved. I'm involved. Why? Well, I'm going to be so big. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm the President of the United States, Tom, and I'm not going to talk about it. It's beneath me to talk about saving millions of lives, because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about saving millions of lives. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it. And if I didn't end the horrible Barack Hussein Obama Iran nuclear deal in my first administration, they would have had a nuclear weapon 3 or 4 years ago. They would have used it. I would have never gotten the chance probably to be president. Who knows if what it would have been so devastating. And if we didn't send those beautiful B-2 bombers, they took them off my desk. They were right there. I don't know why. But if we didn't have those beautiful, the B-2 hit, which was so we obliterated, despite CNN. CNN said, well, maybe the word obliteration said, no, we obliterated it, just obliterated their nuclear potential. You would have had them having 2 weeks after that attack, had we not made the attack, they would have had a nuclear weapon. They would have absolutely used it. And they would have used it on the entire Middle East, including Israel. And you know why you see that? Because unexpectedly, when this war broke out, unexpectedly, they started sending missiles to UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and elsewhere. And nobody thought they were going to. Were you equally surprised by that, Pete?
Way more than we thought, Mr. President.
Pete, do you want to give about a 3-minute statement on how we're doing in this, as I call it, military operation? People don't like me using the word war, but so I won't. But the Democrats call it a war. How about a little statement? I think he's done a very good job. Do we agree he's done a good job, Mark White? Can we take some of your time?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. You're spot on. Never in history has a modern military, Iran had a modern military, a modern navy, a modern air force, modern air defenses, leadership, massive bunker. Never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated, defeated from day one with overwhelming firepower. The air campaign that we've conducted, that Israel's conducted alongside us, was one for the history books, truly. And it's because we have a president of the United States that when he sends his warfighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved on that battlefield. This is not Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not a president who's interested in vague end states. He's been very clear with us about what we need to accomplish, creating the conditions for them never to have a nuclear capability, and that's exactly what we're doing in historic fashion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it. Thank you, Rich.
Mr. President,
You know, the only two people that were quite disappointed, I don't want to say this, but I have to. I said, Pete and General Raisin Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. It's these guys are doing a great job. That's a good attitude, though, Tom, right? They were not interested in settlement. They were interested in just winning this thing. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you, just taking things locally, hopefully not doing international affairs for a second, do you support the construction of the 2nd Avenue subway in New York City, and will your administration work?
That's really a far out question. You know, the 2nd Avenue subway has been under construction for, you're a young guy, is longer than you are old, okay? That's been under construction. I haven't heard about the 2nd Avenue subway in 20 years. What the hell kind of a question is that? I guess they got to get it finished. They spent trillions of dollars practically. No, they spent more money on that than on anything, I think, in the history of our city, in New York City. And it's been under construction for a long time. It's very sad, actually. The only thing maybe worse was Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, his train, I call it his train wreck because it's a wreck. That's been years. It's literally 30 times over budget. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And it doesn't go to San Francisco and Los Angeles like it was supposed to. They decided to cut it way short because there was no way they could finish it. But it's one of the worst. I've never seen anything like it, other than The worst, the Federal Reserve building for almost $4 billion, little building that's going to cost a renovation for $4 billion, headed by our highly incompetent head of the Federal Reserve. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, would you be open, are you hoping to see the Senate pursue Reconciliation 2.0 to fund ICE and pass the Save America Act?
Well, we'll see about reconciliation. We're certainly talking about reconciliation, I think, Mark Wayne, right? Do you want to talk about that for a second? Now that he's working, we can get him to do this.
Right, well, there you go. That was Donald Trump addressing the world live from White House. Lots of different bits there. Iran has agreed not to have a nuclear weapon. He reckons talks are going well. He also says the US are roaming free over Tehran. And he reckons, of course, that they won the war. He says he's received a surprise gift today, but won't tell anyone what it is. But it's something to do with the Strait of Hormuz as well. Don't forget, Iran still say that they're not even talking to him, to the administration. So make of all of that what you will. What do you make to it all? Baroness Jacqueline Foster.
Well, I think they are obviously talking to each other. I think the US has literally, along with Israel, has crushed the military regime and a lot of the military bases in Iran. And obviously, I think what they're talking about is trying to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. It's very important. But it's sometimes quite difficult to determine actually what's going on, so it'll be fascinating. But also, where he is correct, they've taken out the Supreme Leader. I think the one that's taken his place actually isn't alive. And also taken out the leadership, a lot of the leadership of the IRGC, the Islamic Republic Guard Corps. And so let's see where it goes from there. I mean, we want regime change. People would like regime change. It's always very difficult in these situations. But somebody had to take on this horrific regime, which, as I've mentioned, has caused havoc for the last 50 years across the Middle East and in many other places, and been responsible for so many terrorist attacks. And it'd be interesting to see how it moves forward.
Matthew Laza?
I think, we all hope that peace comes. I think there may be a deal to reopen, at least temporarily, the Straits of Hormuz. But the idea that you're suddenly about to have an Iranian regime that kowtows to America is nonsense. And what he's trying to do is cover up what he always does, which is taco. Trump always chickens out. They won't finish the job, and you're going to end up with a complete mess, worse than what you had before. Look at what's happening in Lebanon.
Well, many of you will have stronger opinions on that than what you've been perhaps hearing there. Michelle, I was just about to say, lots of you getting in touch, pontificating about how this will all end. I've got to tell you, anyone right now that tells you that they know how it will end, you've got to ignore them, because nobody knows what will happen next. You've got to expect the unexpected. And I think that's just how Donald Trump likes it, to confuse, to have chaos, to have unpredictability. Who will be the winners and losers out of that? It's anyone's guess, quite frankly. Look, didn't even get a chance to talk about Bob Monkhouse. I'm furious. That was such a good story. I'll try and get onto that another day. You wouldn't believe what's happened with that one. I think it's hilarious. But then I also thought Roy Chubby Brown was hilarious as well. That'll tell you a lot about my upbringing. If you know, you know. Anyway, Matt Laz, I've got to go. Thanks for your company. Jacqueline Foster, thanks for yours. Thank you at home. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold, even if it's not a widespread frost because of the air being stirred up by the wind. It will be a chilly start to Wednesday, cold enough so that these showers into Scotland will be falling as sleet and snow in places, especially above 100 or 200 metres, settling over the hills of northern Scotland. At lower levels, certainly as we go through the day and things warm up slightly, we'll see mostly rain and hail coming through, but continued snow over the higher parts of Scotland and higher parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales as well. Showers pushing into the Midlands, Southern England as well first thing. Some reasonable sunny spells, however, bright skies for many compared with Tuesday's grey. And we'll see some sunny spells extend across most parts of the UK in between these frequent showers. The showers will be most frequent across western Scotland, northwest England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. They'll be accompanied by this cold and gusty wind. So although the thermometer will